A warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at Bracketeer.org. We're going to be chatting with him about a lot of the mid-major landscapes, some of the teams that are going to be in action on Thursday, the Coastal Conference, the fact that as of right now, Utah Valley is not going to be eligible to partake in the WAC or the NCAA tournament, what that does for their landscape. We're also going to take a little bit of a look at the landscape of the Big Ten as well, and then in the final segment, I'm going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we have fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, we had a fun day of college basketball on Wednesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Houston is continuing to be able to cover spreads. They're now 13-9 against the spread, and they are one of the main ranked teams in action on Wednesday, and they absolutely took it to Central Florida. This by a count of 79-55. As for Central Florida, I've been really liking this team thus far this season, but man, did not like what they were able to provide here. As for Central Florida, they go 6-21 from three-point, and they shoot just 31% from the floor. They lose the battle on the glass 40-29. They lose the turnover battle 11-5. And for Houston, Kingston Flemings be able to lead the way with 18 points, but just a really nice collective here. As for Houston, they only go 3 of 19 from three-point, but on their two-point shots, they go 32 out of 45, and they were also able to do a nice job in terms of generating some steals as well, so they were able to do a nice job being able to have a nice cruiser of a win. And how about Illinois and the way that they are going into Inferno mode? How about 84-44 against Northwestern? And for Northwestern, it's not been a great year for them against the spread. They're now 8-13-2 against the spread, and for Illinois, all of a sudden, they've been able to surge quite a bit. They're now up to 15-8 against the spread. That's one of the better marks that you're going to find in all of college basketball, but for Illinois, they just dominated in every facet of this game. They win the rebound battle 50-23. They go 17 out of 38 from three. While Northwestern, they go 4 of 25 from three-point range. For Illinois, they actually lose the turnover battle by a count of 11-1. Northwestern had just one turnover in this game, and they produced 44 points. They went 2 of 4 at the free throw line. So that was pretty wild, to say the least. So a nice quality winner there for Illinois. And then Michigan State, a stunner. They lose in the barn to Minnesota, 76-73. The state with the small strengths in the Union comes through, and it's been a relatively good against the spread record thus far this season for Michigan State, but back-to-back non-covers for them. They now are back below 500 against the spread. As for Minnesota, 10-21 from three-point range. They were led by Jalen Crooker-Johnson, being able to give you 22 points, 7 boards, and for Minnesota, they win the turnover battle 9-6. For Michigan State, they actually do go 9 of 21 from three-point range. You had 16 points out of Cohen Carr, but Garson Cooper as many points as myself. Jeremy Fears, 11 assists and 2 turnovers, but they just weren't able to get a lot on the inside. As for Michigan State, they do win the rebound battle 39-23, but with regards to their 2-point shots, they really didn't excel with that regard. And for Minnesota, they get a nice win at home, so yay verily to them. You had Louisville get the win, but no cover against Notre Dame. This by a count of 76-65 as Notre Dame goes 11-27 from 3, and Louisville just 7-31 from 3. Louisville does win that rebound battle 46-35, and off the bench, Keanu Roos, 12 points, 12 rebounds, so he did a solid job there. But Notre Dame, with Cole Kurta being able to provide 18 points, they remain relatively lively, so that helped them out. And then BYU, been a little bit of a rough stretch for them against the spread. That's a third straight non-cover, 99-92. Oklahoma State, they get the win at home, and Oklahoma State, they win this game despite BYU going 13 of 30 from 3 because they did a nice job winning the turnover battle, 16-8. And the man that was able to take over for Oklahoma State, how about Anthony Roy? He was the top scorer in all of college basketball before he got hurt last year. 30 big points in this game. AJ Devanza, he had himself a nice game of his own, 36 points, 7 rebounds. They didn't lose because of him, but guys off the bench for BYU, unable to provide a lot. Meanwhile, Jalen Curry on the Oklahoma State side of things, he was able to supply 18 big points. If you're taking a look at your top teams against the spread in all of college basketball, right now, numero uno has been Sam Houston, and Sam Houston win but no cover against UTEP. 70-66 final in this one. As for Sam Houston, Houston, 7 of 23 from 3 compared to UTEP's 4 of 22, and they won the rebound battle 40 to 37. But for Sam Houston State, they just did not do a great job on the inside. In terms of their 2-point shots, they go 14 out of 38, and UTEP, they were able to do a pretty solid job in terms of winning the turnover battle 12 to 6. So for Sam Houston State, they've still been a very, very good against the spread record team, but that does drop them now to 16 and 4 against the spread. That ties them with Mercer for the third best mark in all of college basketball. And Portland State, they now stand alone at 14, 3 and 1 against the spread thus far this season. You've been able to have some great covers out of Texas A&M as well. 15 and 7 against the spread, and they don't get the job done outright against Alabama. They certainly do their part with regards to total, though 197. They were catching right around about 7 to 8 points in this one, so they got it covered there. You were able to get some pretty good production out of Marcus Hill, who supplied 18 points, and for Texas A&M, 13 of 31 from 3. Alabama, 16 out of 48 from 3. They had Charles Bediako provide just 5 points after he got drafted in the NBA, so not doing a whole heck of a lot there, but for Alabama, they do win the rebound battle 44 to 36 in a clean game. 6 turnovers apiece, despite the fact that you had a whole heck of a lot of possessions in this one. Kentucky has certainly been a lesser team against the spread in all of college basketball this season. For Kentucky, they've gone against the spread right now just 9 and 13, but they got the job done against an Oklahoma team that's been pretty miserable as far this season if you've been looking to make money. 7-14 and 1 against the spread, and for Kentucky, 94 to 78. They get the job done here as they go 12 of 26 from 3. Ortega Owe starting to feel a little bit, 24 points. Brandon Garrison was able coming off the bench. He was able to supply the team with 20 big points, so that was a nice quality winner there for Kentucky, and other teams have really been able to do a nice job against the spread. Iowa, 14 and 7 against the spread. Now, we shall see what is going to be happening late on Wednesday. I do have to have this up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern. As I am recording this, they are currently in action against Washington, and they are currently in a very high-scoring game, 42 to 40 right now in the first half. So that's looking like an over for an Iowa team that has been very much an underwhelming team thus far this season, and it looks like we're going to have a shocker here. We've got 7 minutes remaining. Gonzaga has been a team that's been a little bit up, down, all around this far this season in terms of against the spread, but straight up they've been able to get a lot of wins. Gonzaga entered in the night, by the way, 12 and 11 against the spread. Right now, with 6 minutes and change, they are down 73 to 58 to Portland, a 10 and 14 Portland team that has lost 8 games in the WCC, as Graham Ike did play in this game, and as I'm recording this with 6 minutes and change remaining, 21 points, 8 rebounds. Nobody else on the team has given this team double figures. Right now for Gonzaga, I can't believe I'm saying it, they're losing the rebound battle 28 to 19. They've actually won the turnover battle. Gonzaga has 11 to 7, but Portland is right now 7 to 15 from 3 with Joel Foxwell, and the Foxwell will give you 25 points. So looks like we're going to have a massive stone out there. You're going to know in the AM whether or not they actually pulled off the cover or not, but man, that is wild and crazy to say the least, and that's a Portland team that's not been covering numbers for you this season. Portland 10 and 12 against the spread as far as this campaign, so that's very interesting to say the least. If you're looking at your lesser teams against the spread this far this season, it has been rough for UMKC, aka Kansas City. They have 5 covers to their name thus far this season, and for UMKC, they went out there and they lost at home to South Dakota, 82 to 75 in the final. They were a slim underdog, so they managed to upchuck defeat from the jaws of victory as they were up 31 to 23 in the first half, and yeah, from there it went downhill. For UMKC, they lose the turnover battle 18 to 12. They lose the rebound battle 35 to 33, and for South Dakota, they go 28 out of 35 at the free throw line. So another non-cover for our good friends over there at UMKC. It's been a rough against the spread record year for UTSA, meet for the Roadrunners, but they were catching right around about 25 points against another team that's been a little bit rough against the spread in South Florida, and they did cover 109 to 88. They managed to hold within the number as you did have Isaiah Nelson supply 25 points, and for UTSA, they finally were able to find some scoring as Brent Moss was able to give the team 32 points, so that was a very demonstrative over. And for Tulsa, they were able to get the job done against Florida Atlantic. This depended upon your closing number. There were some places that were right around about 2 or so, 78 to 76. Tulsa, they get the job done out there with David Green being able to supply 27 points, and it's been a Tulsa team that has been able to make you quite a bit of coin this year. Really, both of these teams have. Tulsa, 13-7 and 1 against the spread this far this season. Florida Atlantic, 14 and 8 against the spread, but they were dealing with an injury to Cannon Carlisle in this game. He did not play, so that hurt Florida Atlantic, who went just 7 to 30 from 3 points, but did win the rebound battle by a count of 44 to 33, but also for Florida Atlantic, 9 to 15 at the free throw line. When you lose a game by 2, that looms very, very large, so that was not necessarily what they were hoping for out there. And then Another team that has been just, well, shall we say, not so great against the spread thus far this season, that'd be the Georgetown Hoyas, but against a Creighton team that is now 8-15 against the spread, Creighton manages to upchuck a big, nasty defeat in the second half. As for Creighton, they lose this game 76-68 after they were leading at the half. They actually got down 15 points with a few minutes remaining in the second half before it became a little bit more respectable, but Georgetown, they go 8-21 from three-point range. KJ Lewis led the way with 22 points, and Georgetown, they win the rebound battle by a count of 46-38 and the turnover battle. Creighton, 16 turnovers in this game, so it's been all sorts of rough out there. And then if you're looking in the Big East as well, the fall of Seton Hall continues. Villanova, 72-60 winner, so another Seton Hall under is able to cash, and another Providence over cash. They go to overtime against Butler. They go to double overtime against Butler, 97-87. They win in double overtime, and this was a game that was 73-73 at the end of regulation. If you had the under, and I did have the under, I feel for you because that was all sorts of brutal. But hey, Jalen Sellers, 36 points, good, clean family fun there. And for Butler, Finley Bizjack, he Bizjack things up with 30 points, but was not enough to be able to get the job done out there. If you're looking at some of your more demonstrative over and under teams, obviously your top over team thus far this season has been Denver, with all but 2 of their games going to the over. But for Providence, they now go to 17 overs and 6 unders thus far this season. New Mexico is currently in action as well. New Mexico has actually been a really good over team for you this season. Going into the night on Wednesday, 15 overs to 6 unders. Looks like things are going to be very underwhelming in this game against Utah State. As of right now, we've got about 39 points up on the board in the first 13 or so minutes, so we shall see what happens there. I personally took the under. Utah State got out to an early lead, so we shall see what's going to be happening on that front. Tulsa, with their result on Wednesday against Florida Atlantic, that wasn't under, but 15 overs to 6 unders. They've still been a very demonstrative over team for you thus far this season. Then Utah has been able to play a lot of overs thus far this season. 15 overs to 7 unders thus far this season. You saw Utah get relatively held down by Arizona State, though, 71-63. This wasn't under in Arizona State. They go on the road. They get the job done in a game where Arizona State only shot 5 of 20 from 3, but they did a nice job in terms of the turnover battle, winning that battle 14-6. And Don McHenry, 23 points for Utah. You had Sadu Traore supply 16 points, but a grand total of 5 points off the bench. That was just not going to cut it for Utah, who's now 1-8 in Big 12 play, so it has not been going well for them thus far this season, and things have not been going well for Baylor either, but back-to-back wins for them, 86-67. They absolutely lambaste Colorado, a Colorado team that started out the year playing very well on offense, but now they played more unders than overs with this one, so going to be intriguing to be able to take a look at them moving forward. Another team has been able to just cash you a whole bunch of overs thus far this season. It's been pretty wild what we've been seeing out of this Santa Clara team. 14 overs, 8 unders, and a push. And by the way, getting back to Texas A&M, they're up to 14 overs and 8 unders thus far this season as well, so they have been very much an overwhelming team. But for Santa Clara, they've been playing a bunch of overs thus far this season, and for the Broncos, they played an under against Pacific, but they absolutely took it to them, 71-55 the final, so that'll drop them to 14 overs, 9 unders, and a push. But Santa Clara, they were able to go out there, dominate this game. For Pacific, they held Santa Clara to going 8 of 30 from 3-point range, but Santa Clara, they won the turnover battle 17-7. Santa Clara actually loses a rebound battle 39-32, but they were able to have just a nice collective in general. And for this Pacific team, they were unable to get a whole lot going on the inside as well with those 17 turnovers. That really caused things to be a little bit underwhelming. So Santa Clara, they do find a way to be able to persevere, get the job done. And then if you're looking at your top under teams in all of college basketball, Fordham, certainly that top under team. We saw them on Tuesday, 4 overs to 16 unders. We're going to be seeing quite a few good under teams in action on Thursday, including UT Arlington, who's only played 5 overs thus far this season, UT Martin as well, but one that was in action and one that was in action on Wednesday. But they had their 8th over of the season, now 8 overs to 14 unders. Pepperdine, I'm doing this as they still have 5 minutes remaining in the game, but the over is already in good standing. Right now it's 75-71 with 5 minutes remaining in the second half, so you saw a nice scoring expose in this one, and it's been a Seattle team that they themselves have been playing quite a few unders thus far this season. Going into the night on Wednesday, Seattle 7 overs to 14 unders as well, so you saw a little bit of a overwhelming sort of game there for Michigan State with the over that they played against Minnesota. Now 8 overs to 15 unders, and Illinois with their under 8 overs to 15 unders as well. Gonzaga, they did enter into the night on Wednesday with 8 overs to 15 unders, looking like it's going to be going over against Portland. We shall see there. I mentioned Central Florida, 8 overs to 14 unders themselves as well, so we've had a lot of great action here in college basketball over the last few weeks. And do I have to mention the old Raging Cajuns of Louisiana? They've been a relatively good under team for you as well. They have played just 9 overs to 15 unders thus far this season. They have not been a good offensive team, to say the least, and they've really slowed things down. And we did see another slog of a game on Wednesday from them, 64-61. They go on the road and they win outright against James Madison. And I failed to mention James Madison a little bit before. James Madison has been one of your most putrid against the spread teams in all of college basketball this year. They're now 7-16 against the spread. VMI, by the way, they lose. They do not cover against Wofford, so now they're down to 7-14 against the spread thus far this season. So, there's a pair of teams that just have not been great for you. And for James Madison, they allow a Louisiana team that's been awful from three to go 10-25 from 3-point range. And James Madison loses this game because they go 8 of 19 at the free throw line. When you lose by 3 points and you go 8 of 19 at the free throw line, it's like, oh, gee, I wonder why we lost that game. And then Gardner-Webb, they have been deplorable against the spread. 7-14 against the spread. They lose by 20 at home to Longwood, 86-66. Another non-cover for Gardner-Webb. Gardner-Webb, yay, verily, that's another over for them because they just are playing no defense whatsoever. 13 overs to 8 under, so they continue to be a nice fade. And if you're taking a look at the landscape of college basketball and what we're all getting trend-wise, it has been a little bit of an underwhelming season thus far if you've been taking a look at the totals, with the last 7 days being very much an underpalooza. Unders are hitting at over 52%, 175 unders to 161 overs. Now that is with a few games pending for Wednesday, but that said, the underdogs have also been cashing 51.5% over the last 7 days, 173 and 163 against the spread. And if you're looking at the season to date, the underdogs are cashing at about 51.3%, 1,990 and 1,889 against the spread, with the under rate in terms of just overall unders, 1,970 unders to 1,910 overs. So the under percentage is now at 50.8% for the season. That's where we're seeing college basketball right now. That's where we're getting trend-wise. Coming next, but if we do chat it up with our good friend Rocco Miller, Bracketeer.org, right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, with myself, Craig Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It's always great to be joined by this man as we've got Rocco Miller aboard. I mean, the man does a little bit of everything, and he does so all so well. Whether you're looking at his work over on Bracketeer.org, taking a look at bracketology, he does a great job with the Fielding the Bracket show over on the Field of 68, along with the Mid-Major show over there. He's over at Basket Under Review, looking at a team of the week in every single conference. I hear that in his free time, he's also selling hot dogs at the hot dog stand near you as well. The man does a little bit of everything. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X and his first and last name, Rocco Miller, and the number 8 all together. And Rocco, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, what a nice introduction. Thanks, Craig. That was very nice of you. Always great to be on with you. I know you're a jack of all trades. You probably know everything about spring training already, while you're also juggling 100 basketball games a day. So it's always good to be joined by you.
Absolutely. We have to keep things dialed in terms of the Milwaukee Brewers trading away Freddie Peralta, which, yeah, that's not great for me to say the least. But you know what? What is great is that we've got a lot of great college basketball action. And before we take a look at some games, and we've got a great slate on Thursday. I know you, much like me, love watching these mid-majors on Thursday, but have to talk about really the big news of the week in terms of the mid-major landscape. And that's at Utah Valley. As of right now, it looks like they're going to be barred from the conference tournament and the NCAA tournament because they are not paying a $1 million buyout fee in the WAC. And just how do you take a look at this ordeal and really the landscape of the conference now? Because I was thinking that Utah Valley was going to be the front runner to be able to represent the conference in the NCAA tournament. Now it becomes very wide open with teams like Cal Baptist and company.
Well, I think it's important to just let things play out. I know it's hard in the moment because we're a little excited, or maybe not excited is the right word, but thrown off and thrown for a loop by the news there. It's a little surprising, first of all, because California Baptist is in the same boat. Both are off to the Big West next year. California Baptist paid the $1 million earlier in the school year. Really no drama there. And they actually helped kind of set the bar for Utah Valley, basically gave the WAC the extra moxie necessary to basically make sure they got their tab paid. And there's no better, you have to think about it from a leverage point as well. Here we are, early February. Next month, the WAC tournament's set to commence at the Orleans Arena for the last time before some of these teams go to the United Conference, and the Southern Utah schools will go to the Big Sky. And of course, the two aforementioned schools go to the Big West. This is their best time to try to leverage the situation, go through a major PR person in Pete Thamel of ESPN. We'll see if it works. Now, the WAC just wants their bill paid. Utah Valley, depending on where they stand with if they should pay the bill, if they have reasons not to pay the bill. I talked to an attorney about it. They could file an injunction to get the lawsuit moved to a later date and a trial, basically make steps towards a trial. If they did all that and got that approved, that would give them plenty of runway to play next month in the tournament. Kind of like a temporary restraining order you see for the players, but a little different, be an injunction for the lawsuit. So you could see that move. You could see them maybe just decide to pay the tab. Here's the high-level forecast that I would provide is Utah Valley has to realize in their entire history, this is their best chance to make the NCAA tournament. They don't have Grand Canyon in their way this year. They're going to a very tough Big West next year where, who knows, they could be near the top. They also could be like 7th or 8th. And they have a lot of weird travel in the Big West next year. They'll be the only team not in California. They have to look at this big picture and say, we will do whatever it takes to make sure we're in that WAC tournament because, like you said, they would be most likely the odds-on favorite to win that event.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I think that it's going to be very fascinating to see what happens in a WAC that you typically don't see a 7-team conference, but that's what we've got this year. So we have got a lot to be able to take a look at there, and certainly it is going to be interesting to see what we get in the WAC. And hey, on Thursday we do have some WAC action as well, as we've got our good friend Rocco Miller who does such great work over at Bracketeer.org joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. Funny that we're talking about because we've got 3 games out there in the WAC with Tarleton versus Cal Baptist, UT Arlington against Utah Tech, and then you got Abilene Christian against Utah Valley. And how do you take a look at these 3 games that we're going to be having on Thursday? Because I think that there's been a lot of exciting action, and I feel like Utah Tech has really been that sleeper team because we're all talking about Utah Valley, but they're 6-3 in the conference, while Utah Tech somehow, some way has gotten to 6-4 and have become very competitive.
Yeah, Utah Tech, they were the team of the week last week in the WAC, getting 2 road wins at Abilene Christian and at that very weird, hard to predict Tarleton team. One of the main bright spots for this Utah Tech team has been a presence defensively. They've got a little bit of a size advantage at some of the positions. They go basically 5 guys that are 6'5" through 6'8". So their guards and wings are really big, and they've been able to create leverage through some of their actions and certainly through the way that they can distract you and make you alter your shots defensively. And that shows up in a lot of the data, especially here in the last month or so, where, they've won 3 games in a row and they perform right now. They're basically a top 150 team in the country. So I think Utah Tech playing at home now, they've got a real shot. I think the way that they're playing, they're not only a factor in the last couple of weeks, I think they're a factor long-term for this 7-team battle royal, maybe a 6-team battle royal of the WAC tournament. And UT Arlington comes in. They also like to get very defensive. The last time they played, it was a 56-52 ball game. No surprise there. So I would expect a little bit even more of a tug-of-war, a very low possession ball game, maybe in the mid-60s. But these 2 teams really struggle to jump shoot it in stretches. I think Utah Tech can get it done.
Yep, with Utah Tech, it's been a lot of fun to be taking a look at them over the last few weeks. It was a little bit up and down, but they've been much better with their interior play this year as well. As Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at Bracketeer.org, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I think it's fair to say, with everything that we've seen this week, one of the biggest question marks among the mid-major conferences right now, you really don't know who the favorite is going to be moving forward. And what are a few other conferences that you're taking a look at that maybe you are going to have your eye on the next few weeks, because it just has gotten really competitive and there's a lot of teams that are stepping up to the plate that maybe we didn't expect coming into the season?
The CAA is a big one. You've got the rematch between UNC Wilmington, who's 8-1 in the league, but their one loss was a road loss at William & Mary. This game will be on CBS Sports Network. If William & Mary can get it done again, that'd be a really key sweep for the Tribe. I'm not sure if the Tribe will catch them long-term in the standings, but obviously a confidence builder if they get the season sweep. The other thing to note about Wilmington is they still have to play Charleston and Elon twice. They have a backloaded schedule. Hostra is still coming into town. They got to go at Campbell. And so the second half of conference play, that'll be the theme as we talk about more leagues, Greg. The second half of conference play for a lot of these leagues were stacked so for television appearances and other reasons. And you're seeing that with Wilmington. They're going to definitely hit their hardest stretch of the entire season. They had a really poor non-conference schedule. I've been waiting for 4 months to see how these Seahawks respond when they have multiple hard games in a row. We're finally going to start learning that about the squad. I'm really excited for that game. I think overall in the CAA, you have Charleston, who's played healthy. Finally, as healthy as they're going to get. They have a couple guys still out for the season, but they're right there at 8-2. They've been playing well, and now they actually have already gone through a lot of the hard part of their schedule. Of course, they get Wilmington twice. That's probably going to settle who wins the league in the regular season. But they're 2 games clear of both Stony Brook and Drexel. And while I'm talking about Stony Brook, Stony Brook, another great week last week with their ability to get the job done against both Campbell and Elon on the road. Very difficult to do. They've been a really helter-skelter squad. Ripped off 5 wins in a row now, the Seawolves. Eric Pratt, when he's on, is unbelievable. And when he's off, he's usually way off. It's a fascinating team. Based on wherever the Seawolves are at come conference tournament time, you got to keep your eye on those matchups. They've ripped off wins, though, of Hostra, Charleston, Northeastern, Campbell, and Elon. 4 of those 5 are definitely contenders for the CAA. And then I think when you look at Drexel, that's a team that nobody was talking about going into league play. But once again, Zach Spiker gets his defense dialed in and game out. That defense gets better every week. And the Dragons are at Campbell. Campbell's 1-4 in their last 5, but they've been in every game. Coach Andrew Check working his butt off. Really wants to see some fruit of his labor. So Drexel, Campbell, Drexel at 6-4, Campbell at 4-6. It's a good game to watch to get an idea of who's going to build some momentum towards the conference tournament. And there's games like that throughout the league. Hofstra was red hot earlier this year, Greg, and now they're ice cold. They're 1-5 in their last 6. They've really got to get things turned around against Northeastern.
Yep, absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what we get out of the CAA moving forward as Towson. I still remember they lost 2 games in CAA play last year. They were the team that ran the show, and then they lost 4 straight to start off conference play. That's just how crazy it's been thus far this season out there in the Coastal Conference, so no doubt about it. I'm going to be locked in on that, as our good friend Rocco Miller of Bracketeer.org, who's going to be rated here on Coast to Coast Soups, is going to be as well. And we've got a few other intriguing games that are going to be happening on Thursday. It's mostly mid-major fare, but we've got a few Big Ten games, with obviously Michigan being the biggest team that is going to be in action on Thursday. And how do you take a look at the landscape of the Big Ten? Because Michigan, they were looking like not just the best team in the Big Ten, but the best team nationally in all of college basketball. But all of a sudden, Illinois has been able to rise up, even though Nebraska's lost a pair of games in a row. What they did on the road against Michigan, being shorthanded, holding in there to 1 possession, I think was relatively impressive as well. We've seen Michigan State have their triumphs as well. I think that the Big Ten is really going to be playing a big part as to what we're going to be seeing in the NCAA tournament this year, and I really am going to be fascinated to see what we get here in the month of February, because it just feels like what was going to be a foregone conclusion with Michigan being that top team. All of a sudden it's opened up, and we've got like 5 contenders right now.
Yeah, well, there's 5 heavyweights for sure. Obviously Michigan headlines the list, but I got to see Illinois in person last Thursday, Greg. That team is unbelievable, depending on when you want to run the report or whatever, with Wagler filling in for Kylan Boswell and getting a larger role. I mean, this team is unbelievably dynamic. His arms are so long, Wagler, that their defense is actually arguably a step tougher to score on than they were with Boswell in there all the time. and they are just absolutely gigantic. I'm really looking forward to when we get to see Illinois versus Michigan. I do think Michigan's excellent and dynamic and has a great front court and all the things, but they've also hit some rough patches in certain games. They let Michigan State rally all the way back, almost lost the game in that last showdown. Still a tremendous win. They're clearly better than the Spartans getting that win on the road. But I just am stacking everybody up against Illinois right now after watching Illinois go to Purdue and Illinois go to Nebraska. And they were clearly, in my mind, clearly the better side in both of those games on the road. So I think it's Illinois. They started behind because they lost to Nebraska at home to start the season, to start the league season. But I think this is Illinois' league to lose. Purdue slipped off a little bit with some inconsistent play from TKR. He did have a good game last time out. There are some gaps that Purdue's trying to solve. Them and the Spartans clearly belong in that top 5 mix. But I think I'm all in on Illinois.
I'm right there with you. I've been very impressed by what I've seen out of Illinois. I feel like even with what they did last week, they're one of the more underrated teams of college basketball. And just in your overall just viewpoint, who are some of those teams? Because we saw another team on Wednesday that I think is very undervalued in Central Florida. They're a team that entered in the week outside the top 25. I thought that was a whiff by the poll voters because I have really liked what I've seen out of them. Or just a few teams in general, high major, mid major. It's Steelers' choice on this one. You're taking a look at it, and you really feel like they're going a bit under the radar right now.
Well, I'll start with Stephen F. Austin because I covered them in person.
Stone cold Stephen F. Austin, baby.
That's right. Crack one open there, Greg.
Yes.
But that was a tremendous experience to see them play McNeese at home, turning the program around. They now have a 2-game lead in the Southland at 13-1. A little bit unexpected, I think. McNeese has had their footprint on the league for 3 years now with loaded talent. McNeese clearly spent a lot more this year than anybody else in the Southland, although, Stephen F. Austin, obviously very quality, did a great job getting Keon Thompson and Krishan Christmas to return, even though it was a brand new staff under Matt Brower, who certainly deserves Coach of the Year in the league. But they built the team around those two, got some great pieces around them. I know Cam Burton came over from Stila. The way that they're able to move the ball and pass the ball, move without the ball, all the different actions they run scissors, they run Spain. I was right there for a front row seat. Very impressive. And they're organized defensively. Christmas is an amazing, not only rebounder, but shot blocker. I asked him in the press conference if he would rather, block a shot or dunk a basketball. And he's one of those guys that would rather block a shot. I always like that answer when I get it. So they have a lot of pride on the defensive end. They're fluid offensively. And it's going to take a great game for McNeese to beat them in the conference championship game if that's what we get, even though the game is in Lake Charles. So Stephen F. Austin, he got 8 more games of league play. They don't have to play McNeese again until a potential championship game. And that's where I'll start, but I think I would also go to St. Louis. I think this is kind of obvious by now, but seeing them on Friday last week was phenomenal. They just torched Dayton in the Arch Barron Cup. They basically showed the world that anybody in their first 8 players can lead the team in scoring when Brady Dunlap, who was sick last week and barely played at all, comes out and hits a 3 that cuts the lead to 5 for Davidson at halftime, and then hits a bunch of big shots down the stretch to lead the team with 22 points. They are loaded across the board 1 through 8. They're responsible defensively with the backbone of Paul Atieno. I think it is a Sweet 16 worthy team, and depending on matchups, perhaps further. And I just really hope they don't stub their toe because we don't have a lot of teams like that to root for this year that really have the high level, elite, like high major level players behind Robbie Avila, Atieno. Ish Sharma's been amazing. This team is special. I would say, the way Tulsa's playing right now, they got my eye. I'm not 100% sold on the Golden Hurricane, but they're about to tip off on Wednesday against Florida Atlantic. I expect them to go down there, find a way to win. It sounds like FAU's playing without Kane and Carlisle. And it's a team that just really has been down for like 10 years and finally was able to get some good decisions done in the transfer portal. All these pieces fit really well. And Tulsa's been moving the ball, fluid on offense. It's been really exciting to watch them. And I also got to look at the Belmont Bruins. They've ripped off a ton of wins in a row now. Casey Alexander's a very underrated coach. They're doing this without their point guard, Nick McLean, who I believe is going to be out for the season. That's not official, but I spent some time with them last week, and I feel pretty confident about that. So their ability to adjust without their point guard just makes it all the more impressive. You know better than anybody, Greg, Missouri Valley is really, really hard to navigate, and they're going week in and week out, and they've really seized control of the entire league race. Beyond impressed by the Bruins.
Absolutely. I am impressed by the Bruins as well. It is going to be a lot of fun to see what we get out of these teams the next few weeks, as we've seen some great high-quality basketball here in the first months of the season, Rocco, but I know you, much like myself, are jonesing for what we're going to get here in February and in March. You're dialed in on all these conferences and all these teams, so love to give people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, appreciate it, Greg. So Thursdays is our mid-major show. You get a lot more talk like this if you're listening to this on Thursday at 5 Eastern on Field of 68. Sean Paul and I will be co-hosting tomorrow. No Vince this week. Come back every Thursday, 5 Eastern. And then our bracketology show on the same platform, Field of 68, is 5 Eastern as well. Mondays and Fridays. I'll be on this Friday to break down all the updates as we see the Wednesday results come in, the Thursday results come in. I'll be up late Thursday getting the bracket ready. That will be posted on bracketeer.org. Thank you, everybody, for all of your support. There's a support button if you want to continue supporting our work. We appreciate it. I'm sending 4 writers to the NCAA tournament this year that were all approved just in the last week. Super exciting for the site. And then a basket under review. I'm a small part of it, but I've been interviewing some conference commissioners. And, of course, weekly I do the teams of the week, which I want people to know is all 31 leagues. It's not just the 5 awards that I tweet out. I will go in each league and tell you about who impressed me the most each week. So hopefully people are getting value out of that because, you know, how else are you going to know that Morgan State Bears have won 5 in a row or that Bethune-Cookman looks unstoppable in the SWAC? You got to come to that Teams of the Week article every week to keep up. It helps me keep up. So that's why I do it. I appreciate everybody supporting it.
The only other way you'd be able to know is if you're winning bets on these teams as well. And those are the dedicated souls that are doing that. And Rocco, he does a great job in terms of giving you the information to know that, hey, you know what? Morgan State, they have been a little bit hot against the spread. They've been able to get things rocking and rolling. Along with Bethune-Cookman, our good friend Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, they have been amazing as well. Rocco's dialed in on all those teams, and every single time he joins me, he learns such great insights. So big thanks to Rocco for joining me on Coast to Coast Superstar, part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we have some big shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by our man, Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at bracketeer.org. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So big thanks to Rocco for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at @GUnit_81, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games in the bigger conferences up top, and then these conferences will be the ones at the bottom. The America East, if we have any Big South action, the Atlantic Sun, the NEC, the MEAC, the SWAC will be down there, as well as the Patriot League. So that'll keep things nice, clean, and easy. Let's get things started. 769, 770 on the card. You've got Michigan, and they're going to be playing us Penn State. Penn State is a 25 to a 25.5 point underdog throughout this game. You're finding it between 161.5 to 163.5, and I'm in on the under. I did set my total at a 157.5. I just don't know if Penn State is going to be able to do their part with this total. It's a Penn State team that has been ghastly on defense, or well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're also 275th in terms of total possessions per game. And you go back to the last time these two teams played, Penn State actually gave Michigan a really good run for their money. That's when Michigan was really rolling. That was a 74-72 game that they lost at home. I think that Michigan is going to be out for a little bit of blood here. I did set my line at 25.5, so 25 or less, I'm willing to lay it with Michigan. It's a Michigan team that is very much looking to push tempo themselves, 15th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Michigan is just absolutely dominating down low. And right now for Penn Penn State, you only have one guy on the roster that gives you over 4.2 rebounds per game in Ivan Jurcic, so that's not great to say the least. Meanwhile, for Michigan, they're just a very well-rounded team. They're 19th in the country in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, top 10 team in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. Morris Johnson, along with Yaxel Lendeborg and Ade Mera, are all give you at least 6.5 rebounds per game apiece, and with Mera, you get 2.6 blocks per contest. Lendeborg, he gives you a little bit of three-point shooting. It's only been shooting about 30% from three here, but Morris Johnson is actually up to 41% three-point shooting, and they've really taken care of the turnover issues with Eli Kadu. Give you 5.3 assists to 2.5 turnovers per game. It is a Penn State team that has been a top 75 unit in terms of turnovers generated on a per-possession basis, and one thing that Penn State does, they do a good job of, is taking care of the ball themselves. They've been a top 35 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per-possession basis, top 100 team in terms of their free throw shooting percentage, but man, they're really up against this Michigan team down low, as you've had Caden Mingo, Freddie De Leon, actually combined for about 28 points per game. De Leon, though, only shoots about 31% from three, and Penn State, they're shooting 33.5% from the outside. That's outside the top 175 in all of college basketball. Josh Reed has actually stepped up to be able to give you 10 points per game, but Malai Tunka, who was so good towards the beginning part of the season, down to about 8.5 points per game, with this team just getting absolutely blasted on the glass. Penn State is well outside the top 225 in terms of rebound percentage, and they're outside the top 335 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. I think that Michigan State can win this game up to 25. I set my line at 25.5, so I'm going to be willing to lay up to 25 there, but I do think that with how slow Penn State plays and the fact that they do generate a few turnovers, that's going to be just enough for the under. Somebody told 157.5, so I do like that under. 771, 772 on the card. It is Monmouth, and they're going to be on the road against Stony Brook, and Stony Brook does find themselves as a favorite of 3 points. Total open up at a 137.5. I'm now seeing this more in that neighborhood, about a 133.5, 134.5, and as long as it's a 133 or higher, I'm in on the under sub high total at a 133. We've got a pair of teams that are really not looking to push tempo, as Monmouth right now 254th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Stony Brook, they're right there at 256th in the country, and this is a Stony Brook team that has not fired on all cylinders on offense, 230th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Monmouth is 258th. Interestingly, Monmouth is actually averaging more points per possession when they're away from home rather than at home, and I do think that they remain lively in this game. I did set my line at 1. I'm going to be willing to take the points, mainly because the Stony Brook team is just not doing a great job of executing down low. They're outside the top 10 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. You've got a Monmouth team that has been a country average team, 193rd in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. For Stony Brook, they are lying it from the outside, 263rd with this regard, but it is a Monmouth team that is in the top 45 in the country with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, and Monmouth has not shot it well inside the arc as well. They're outside the top 3, but they're also denying a lot of shots. They're a top 25 team in terms of shot block percentage, with Doc Mortar and Jason Rivera-Torres also being able to give you a 1.4 blocks per contest apiece. Rivera-Torres, a little bit of a do-it-all guy, top scorer with 15 points, 8 boards, and then you've got Justin Reyes, Stefanos Spatalis, who have been able to combine for about 22 points per game, and Ray shoots 39.5% from 3. Jack Collins has been that do-it-all point guard, 5 boards, 5.5 assists, 7.5 points, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range, and for Monmouth, country average team in terms of their free throw shooting percentage at about 73%, and they shoot about 34% from 3. Neither here nor there on that front. Meanwhile, you've got a Stony Brook team that you've been able to have a really good scoring out of. One, Mr. Eric Pratt, 19.5 points, 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists. Outside of that, you've only got one other double-figure scorer in Hot Rod Brown, who's been able to give you 10.5 points per game. It's a Stony Brook team that does shoot 36% from 3, so they've been solid there. But again, they're outside the top 300 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. You put this team on the free throw line, they only shoot 70.5% at the charity stripe there. Neither of these teams are really generating a lot of turnovers, so I think that you get a little bit of a sloggier game. And right now for Stony Brook, you've got one guy that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game, and Richard Goods, who does give you the goods with about 8 points, 6 boards, a steal per contest, shoots 41% from 3. But with the way that neither of these teams really executes down low, with the way that Monmouth has been really good in terms of their shot blocking, I do think that that keeps them lively in this game. One that I think is going to be lower scoring at a 133.5 or higher. I like the under, and with Stony Brook, could I make them a 1-point favorite? So won't take any sort of points above 1 with Monmouth. 773, 774. Mercer is on the road against Chattanooga, and the Bucks do find themselves as a home underdog here of 5.5 to 6.5 points on this game, finding it anywhere between a 154.5 to a 155.5, and I did something to a 152.5. I'm in on the under. Now this opened up at a 158, so we're starting to see this getting pile driven downward, but for Chattanooga, they are outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis at home, 295th in terms of total possessions per game. At home, they shoot less than 34% from 3, and that's where you need to hurt this Mercer team. This Mercer bunch has been relatively okay in terms of generating turnovers. Now overall, they're about 250th 155th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they've been a top 125 team in terms of generating turnovers. They are allowing teams to shoot well above 35% from three-point range, though, as their main strength has been on the interior. It's Mercer team that actually finds themselves now in the top 65 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, because they're a top 60 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, top 85 team with regards to their own two-point shooting percentage, and they've been a top 150 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage as well, but they do give up a lot of second and third chances, which Chattanooga does not generate. Chattanooga is a bottom 10 team in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage, so they are not going to be able to exploit that weakness for Mercer, as you do have Armani Mighty, who has been very mighty down low, 13.5 points, 10.5 boards, block and half per contest, and then Brady Shoulders gives you a bit of everything, 10 points, 7 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. Mercer, neither here nor there with their three-point shooting at about 34.2% from three, not afraid to take a lot of threes, and for Chattanooga, they take over 50% of their shots from three-point range. They are a top 20 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from three, as Jordan Frinson is right now your lone double-figure scorer. 14.5 points, shoots 42.5% from three, and then Tate Turner has been able to shoot 38% from three, 9.5 points, 4 boards per contest, and I recognize that Mercer might not be monsters of the midway down low, but he's the lone healthy player on this team right now that gives you over 3.3 rebounds per game. Like, this Chattanooga team is just giving you absolutely nothing down low. Now, they're honestly not awful with their shooting percentages. They're in top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, but they're also well outside the top 285 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, because they're not putting you under duress. They're allowing a lot of second and third chances, and I think that Mercer, who's been a top 5 team against the spread in all of college basketball thus far this season, they keep rolling and they get the job done. I said my total 152.5. I'm in on the under, and with Mercer, I'm a little late to 8 with them, made them an 8.5 point favorite. 775, 776. Sacred Heart is going to be playing against Fairfield, and the Sags of Fairfield, and a lot of places are a 1 to 1.5 point underdog. Total on this game, it is 154.5 to 155, and at a 155, I'm in on the under. Set my total at a 154, but I feel like Fairfield should be the slim favorite here. I made them a favorite of 2 points. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on them on the money line. It's a Fairfield team that is not necessarily a great shooting team. They are well outside the top 260 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. Their 3-point shooting percentage right around about 200th at about 33.6%, but they're doing the little things well. In games played away from home, they're a top 10 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. They're a top 40 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, so they're crossing the T's, they're dotting the I's. They don't really get to the free throw line a ton, but they don't put you on the free throw line either, and I love what Braden Sparks brings to the table. 17 points, 2.5 assists, shoots 38% from three, and then down low, Brandon Benjamin, along to Klon Wolfinger. These have been your two main guys down low. They combine for about 26 points, 18 rebounds per game, so I love what they bring to the table. Deuce Turner down for what has been able to give you about 9 points per contest, and then you've got Cam Esteves, who's been dealing with injury. When he's been out there, he's been a relatively okay 3-point shooter, but really wasn't much of a factor for this team. And for Sacred Heart, this is not really an up-tempo team. You've got a pair of teams that are not necessarily pushing a aggressive tempo right now for Sacred Heart. 216th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Fairfield has been throttling down recently, 262nd in terms of total possessions per game. And Sacred Heart, their forte is supposed to be on offense. They're 178th overall in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but if you look at them specifically in their home games, they fall outside the top 250. It's a Sacred Heart team that has been very much based around 3-point shooting. Anquan Hill last year shot 40% from three. That's been down to about 31.5% from three, but he dealt with a little bit of injury, and since he's come back, he's been better. 17.6 rebounds per game. And then you got Niall Ralph Byer, Jan Farrell, and Deshaun Gittins. These three guys have been able to combine for about 40.5 points per contest, and they all shoot at least 41% from three-point range. And then Makai Connor, 6.5 assists per game, but the turnovers are an issue. This team is outside the top 255 in terms of their ball security. They're outside the top 250 in terms of generating turnovers on a per possession basis on defense, and this team is getting absolutely bludgeoned down low. They're right around about 250th with their own 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 150 with regards to overall rebound percentages. They're giving up a lot of second and third chances. Now, Sacred Heart, a 77.5% free throw shooting team, but they're a bottom 75 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis, and I think that Fairfield, doing all those little things well, find a way to be able to get the job done here. I like Fairfield on the money line. I set a total of a 154, so 154.5 or higher. I do like the under. 777 to 778 on the card. It is Merrimack, and they are going to be on the road against Mount St. Mary's, and the Mount is a underdog here of 3.5 points. Total open up at a 130.5. We're starting to see this go up to about a 134.5 to a 135, and I set my total at a 128.5. I do like the under. Merrimack games are just going under right now. Like, my goodness, this team is playing slogs. Merrimack, 353rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Mount St. Marys, not a blazer, not a super slow team, 227th in terms of total possessions per game, but they're really not executing on offense. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 328th in the country. They're honestly not the world's worst low post team, and that's a big reason why I do think that they're going to be able to hold in this game. Did set them as 4.5 point underdogs, so I'm willing to lay the 3.5 with Merrimack, but for Merrimack, even though they're a bottom 5 team with regards to rebound percentage, you're getting absolutely blasted there. They should be able to generate turnovers on a Mount St. Mary's team that is not taking care of the ball. For Mount St. Mary's, out of 365 teams, 364th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and Merrimack isn't what they were a few years ago in terms of generating turnovers, but they're still a solid team in terms of generating turnovers. They're right now checking in 43rd in the country. They've been getting better and better as the season goes along, and for Mount St. Mary's, they don't generate any turnovers in return. At home, they're outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis overall for the season, about 320th, and for Mount St. Mary's, they've been good with their interior defense. Right now, they're a top 45 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, country average team with their own 2-point shooting percentage on offense, but you just are lacking a lot of pizzazz with this team, and even though they've got the edge down low, only one guy gives you over 5 rebounds per game. Luke McKeldin with about 10.9 points, 5.9 rebounds per game, and then you do have Trey DeVue, who's been able to do a nice job with his versatility, about 11 points, 4.5 boards, shoots 35% from 3. Arlandis Keys, 11.5 points, shoots 36.5% from 3, but also for this Mount St. Mary's team in a pressure spot, they shoot 67.7% of the free throw line. That's a bottom 40 mark in all of college basketball. And for Merrimack, you do have 2 nice go-to scorers on this roster, and KVR Kennedy, Ernest Shelton. They combine for about 33 points per game, combined to shoot in the neighborhood about 36.5% from 3-point range, and for KVR Kennedy, about 4 assists per game. And Merrimack does do a good job in terms of taking care of the ball. They're a top 75 unit in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Again, they're going to get blasted down low, but they're also not giving you good looks from 2-point or 3-point range. Top 130 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They themselves are a top 50 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Now, they're outside the top 275 with their own 2-point and 3-point shooting percentages, but if this comes down to free throws, they shoot 77.2% at the free throw line. That's a top 40 mark in the country. You've had Casey Ogukazi down low, be able to give you a pair of blocks per contest. Todd Brogna, he's able to give you about 4.5 boards, 5.5 points per game. I think that that's enough for Merrimack to go on the road, get the job done. Set my line at 4.5. I'm willing to lay with Merrimack, and I like the under. I set my total at a 128.5, 779, 780 on the card. It is Siena, and they're going to be playing this to Iona, and Iona does find themselves here as an underdog of 7.5 to 8 points. Total on this game, it is a 140, and set a total of 142.5. I do like the over. It's an Iona team that's been really good with their opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, being a top 70 mark in the country, but they are a team that's getting blasted on the glass. They're outside the top 275 in terms of rebound percentage. Neither here nor there in terms of generating turnovers, and it has been a Siena team that when they've been at home, they honestly have not generated a ton of turnovers. Away from home, they've been a top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and even though Siena is outside the top 340 in terms of total possessions per game, I do like the over, mainly because with Siena, they're actually giving up more points per possession at home rather than away from home. Get them in a road/record setting, they're a top 35 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, while outside the top 130 at home. And for Siena, this team has been able to do a much better job with their 3-point shooting recently. Overall for the season, they're outside the top 300 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, but if you look at conference play and conference play only, they're shooting about 37.1% for 3. That's actually second in the MAAC. You've got Gavin Doty, who's been supplying 16.5 points. He overall for the season shoots 35.5% for 3, 40% here in conference play. And then your next top 2 scorers in conference play, Justice Schultz, Francis Fulfak. Both of these guys have been shooting 40+% from 3 in conference play, and Christian Jones has been shooting 45.5% from 3 in Metro Atlantic play. I do think that they get cooled down a little bit by this Iona team that has been able to do a nice job in terms of being able to guard the arc, but also for the Siena team, not grabbing as many second and third chances with Tasman Goodrick, who is giving you about 7.5 rebounds per game, currently being on the sidelines. Now, they still should have a nice advantage down low. This has been a Siena team that has been a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage, but they're country average team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and for Iona, this is a team that is looking to run. They have been slowed down a little bit here in conference play, but in terms of total possessions per game, they're still a top 140 team in the country, and Iona does have CJ Anthony on their side, supplying 5.5 assists, 14 points per game, shoots 38% from 3. Again, you're not going to get second and third chances with this team, but you do have Lamine Sabali, who's been able to give you about 8 rebounds, 11 points per contest. Toby Harris has been able to give you 12 points, shoots 40% from 3, and then Luke Jungers has been able to shoot 42% from 3-point off the bench. I do think that this Iona team is going to do just enough to be able to remain lively. They're a team that's okay, not great, not terrible in terms of taking care of the ball, and with this Iona team being country average in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, I think that that's enough to be able to hold in this game. So I did set my total 142.5. I think that this is close enough for late game following. I like the over, and I'm going to take 7+ here with Iona. 781, 782 on the card. It is Cincinnati, and yes, we're on to Cincinnati, who is playing us to West Virginia. And West Virginia is an underdog of 5.5 to 6 points. Total open up at a 123.5. Now we're up to between a 126 to a 127, and I did set my total at 129.5. I'm going to be in on the over. You do have two teams that are really not pushing a lot of tempo, especially West Virginia, 351st in terms of total possessions per game. You got a Cincinnati team that is 144th, but here in conference play, they have really been slowed down, and for Cincinnati, the offense has been ghastly. They are 285th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They cannot knock down three-point shots to save their lives, as right now they're shooting 30.4% for three. That's about a 35 mark in all of college basketball. Now they're tremendous on defense. Cincinnati continues to be a top 25 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but turnovers. Cincinnati outside the top 230 in terms of their ball security as well. And Bobby Miller down low has been great. 13.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game, and Harlan Obiana on the flip side for West Virginia. True 7-footer is able to give you 5.5 to 6 rebounds per game. I like what Brandon Lorient is able to bring to the table. Double-figure scorer, 5.5 to 6 rebounds per game. He's going to need to match up with Mustafa Team, who's been able to give you a block and a half, 11 points per game. And interestingly, West Virginia, 23rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but some of the most extreme home and road splits that you're going to find in the country. They are giving up, and I'm not even kidding here, over 28 points more per winner in possessions away from home rather than at home. They're well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home. But again, will Cincinnati be able to take advantage? We shall see. And while West Virginia, not necessarily the Mona Lisa Vitos of scoring, they are a top 155 team in terms of points per possession. They are going to have to, on defense, also match up with Jizzle James, who's been able to give you 10 points per game ever since he's come back for Cincinnati. But I do think that West Virginia is going to be able to remain lively because you've been able to have Mr. Hunter Huff be able to huff, puff, and give you 16 points per game on 37% three-point shooting. Trayson Eaglestaff has really been able to emerge here in conference play. In conference play, he's averaging about 12.5 points on 45% three-point shooting. It is a West Virginia team that's okay in terms of taking care of the ball, about a country average team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They're a top 100 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and Cincinnati is not allowing any second and third chances themselves. And for West Virginia, their two-point shooting percentage leaves something to be desired outside the top 200 there. In terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, they're a top 35 team. Their weakness is three-point shooting defense, and Cincinnati's not doing a lot of that. And if this comes down to late game fouling, it's just hard to trust in Cincinnati in this spot. I recognize that West Virginia shooting 68.5% of the free throw line. That's hovering right around 300th, but Cincinnati 66% at the free throw line. That is a bottom 20 mark in all of college basketball. So circumstance where I set my line at 1.5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with West Virginia. I think you get just enough scoring for the over. Set my total at 129.5, so I'm also in on that over. 783, 784. St. Peter's is going to be on the road against Manhattan, and Manhattan does find themselves as a home underdog here of 4.5 points. So this game, it is 146.5, and I made a total of 143.5. I do like the under. You've got a Manhattan team that is neither here nor there with their tempo, 177th in terms of total possessions per game. You do have a St. Peter's team that is very content to be making games slogs, as they are 317th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And it's a St. Peter's team that, once again, is solid with their defense. They're 85th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Manhattan, not solid with their defense. 343rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I did make my line here a 3.5, so we are taking a look at the 4+ with Manhattan because they are the better offense. With Manhattan, they're hovering right around about 245th, 250th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and it is a Manhattan team that has been really giving it up from three-pointers themselves. They're allowing teams to shoot 37.9% from the outside. They've been a little bit better on the interior, but they're also getting blasted with regards to rebound percentage. They're outside the top 350 with that regard, and it is a St. Peter's team that a lot of their offense does center around getting second and third chances. They're actually 22nd in the country, grabbing 35.5% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound in games played away from home. They actually are Mambo number 5 in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, with grabbing over 37% of their misses as an offensive rebound, but they're also outside the top 275 in terms of their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentages, so they can't knock down shots. Their specialty has been generating turnovers. Top 30 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis on defense, as they do allow a little bit from the outside. They're a country average team in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, and they will put you on the free throw line. This is a top 20 team in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis, but Brett LeBland, he's able to give you 14 points, and I mean, for the St. Peter's team, I will say each of your top 4 scorers do shoot at least 76.9% at the free throw line. TJ Robinson, about 9.5 points per contest, doesn't shoot it well from 3, but throws in there a steal per contest, and Bland has been able to give you 2.5 steals per game as well. But the one thing that Manhattan has actually done an okay job of is taking care of the ball. This Manhattan team, they are a top 100 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, outside the top 300 with their 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 225 with their 3-point shooting percentage. But yeah, put this team on the free throw line. They shoot 79.6% of the free throw line, and St. Peter's will foul. So that's actually big in this spot. You've got Devin Dinkins along with Jaden Winston, who have been able to combine for 28.5 points per game. Winston Fullerton throws in their 2.5 steals, 3.5 assists, shoots 36.5% from 3. Dinkins around 36% from 3. Terrence Jones shoots 36% from 3 with about 11 points per contest. I do think that though the Man defense is ghastly, and I mean ghastly, I think that they hold up in the spot because St. Peter's flat out can't shoot. I think that leads to a little bit more of a slog of a game. Set my line at 3.5, so 4+. I'm going to take the points with Man. Made my total 143.5, so almost in on the under. 785, 786. You've got Hostra, and they're going to be playing us to Northeastern, and Northeastern a pretty sizable underdog here, as you're going to be catching with them between 9.5 to 10 points, and it's all this game between 154.5 to 155.5, and made my total 153. So 153.5 or higher. I'm going to be in on the under, and I'm going to lay with Hostra. I said Hostra is a 13-point favorite. This Hostra bunch has been a top 25 unit in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. Now, I will say Northeastern has some good 3-point shooting. They're a top 150 team, shooting about 34.8% from 3-point range, but they still been dealing with the injury to LA Pride, who had 17 points per game in their first 3 games and has not been seen ever since then. So they've had to rely upon William Kamori to be able to get the offense going. 13.5 points. She's 43% from 3-point range, but this team just doesn't have a lot down low. Xander Alare is the lone guy on the roster that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game. He's still dealing with injury. Yuri Fritz, your next top rebounder with about 4.5 rebounds per game. He's been all sorts of banged up. We haven't seen him in about 3 weeks. That leaves nobody on the roster that gives you over 4 rebounds per game. And Hofstra's not the Mona Lisa Vitos of being able to hit the glass or anything like that, but they've got a big advantage here. And this Northeastern team has been ghastly on defense. They're outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. And in terms of that 2-point shooting percentage, that goes well outside the top 325. For Northeastern, they're well outside the top 250 in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. They're okay in terms of taking care of the ball, and they're not awful in terms of generating turnovers, but you should be able to cruise if you're Hofstra. And by that, I mean Cruz Davis has been able to give you 21.5 points per contest. He shoots about 42% from 3-point range. Then Preston Eadman, 15.5 points. He shoots 38% from 3. They were dealing with an injury to James Boogie Patterson. Should be good to go in this game. He's been able to give you about 5 boards per contest. And then Silas Sunday, 5 points, but 6.5 rebounds per game. Victor Alatinu, he's been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game as well. So this Hofstra team should be able to dominate down low. It's a Hofstra team that ranks about 110th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They have been a top 150 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They don't really generate a lot of turnovers, but they don't allow you to be able to get clean looks. It's a Hofstra team that as well has been a top 75 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that results in an offensive rebound. And with this team shooting 38% from 3, top 20 mark in the country, they should be able to go out there, get the job done. I just don't think that Northeastern does their part with this total, and Hofstra has been good in terms of slowing games down in terms of total possessions per game, 287. So at anything above a 153, I'm in on the under. And with Hofstra, made them a 13-point favorite. So I'm going to be looking to lay this number. 787, 788 on the betting board. America's favorite tag team. You don't just get William, you don't just get Mary, you get both on the road against UNC Wilmington, and you also get 4.5 points as William and Mary between a 4.5 to a 5-point dog, between 155 to 158.5 is a total. It's a total as being driven upward, and I'm in on the under. I saw my total at a 154.5. William and Mary is looking to play at lightning speed in terms of total possessions per game. They're 18th in the country, and then you've got a Wilmington team that's looking to play nice and slow, 320th in terms of total possessions per game. But for this William and Mary defense, they've actually been quite good. They're overall 129th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but you put them in a roadside court setting that actually goes into the top 55. It's a Wilmington team that has absolutely dominated the glass. They're a top 25 team in terms of rebound percentage with William and Mary outside the top 250. I think that that's going to be doomsday for them. That's a big reason why I did set Wilmington as a 6.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number as for this Wilmington team. Overall, they are ranked 52nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, specifically in their home games that ascends into the top 40. And for this William and Mary team, they have been a top 25 team in turnovers generated on a per possession basis on defense, and their line teams to shoot less than 31% from 3-point range. But for this Wilmington team, they haven't been amazing with their 3-point shooting. They're about 150th. At home, that actually goes down to 32.8%. Name of the game for them is getting second chances. They're a top 40 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. They bring in a 7-footer who began his career over at Virginia Tech, and Patrick Wessler has been able to lead that charge. 13.5 points, 9 boards, a block per contest. And then you've got Nolan Hodge, one of the main returners from last year, shooting 39% per 3, 15.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. Christian May, he makes a May Day with about 5.5 rebounds per game. And it's a Wilmington team that they themselves do not allow you to be able to get good looks from 3. Teams are shooting less than 30% from 3 against them. That's a top 30 mark in all of college basketball. Get me out a little bit inside. They're outside the top of 120 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but this team dominates with regards to that aspect. And for Wilmington, they make the most also on their possessions. They're a top 65 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, so that takes away one of the strengths of this William & Mary team. And William & Mary, they themselves have been outside the top 250 with their own ball security, so I do think that you get a little bit of a sloppier game with a lot of possessions that are dead, so I'm in on the under now. William & Mary, a top 35 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, and it's a whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach, as you've got right now 8 different guys that give you between 7 and 11.5 points per contest. None of these guys really shoot it great from 3, but they love to take threes. They shoot 33.8% from the outside. That's just a hair outside the top 175 in all of college basketball. As you've been able to have Reese Miller do a nice job, give you about 2.5 assists per contest. Chase Lowe is able to give you 4 assists per game as well, but I do think that with this William & Mary team not being able to generate the turnovers that they do in the past, and this William & Mary team being outside the top 300 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, that this Wilmington team, they win from within. Semi-line at 6.5, so I'm willing to lay up to 6 with Wilmington. At 155 or higher, I'm in on the under. 789, 790 on the card. Elon is on the road against Hampton, and the Pirates are Hampton, say yard, being a home underdog, as right now you're catching with them anywhere between 1 to 2 points on this game. It is between 142 to a 145.5, so we've seen this come down from the opener of 145.5, and I do like the over. I did set my total at a 148, mainly because you've got an Elon team that's just been so good on offense. Top 75 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're shooting 35.7% from 3-point range. They're executing on the inside, and they grab second chances. This Elon team, in games played away from home, they grab 33.9% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is a top 30 mark in all of college basketball. And I mean, that's one of the fortes of this Hampton team. Hampton has been able to do a nice job giving themselves second and third chances, top 150 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. This Hampton team is well outside the top 260 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and it's a Hampton team that's looking to slow things down. 323rd in terms of total possessions per game. Elon, mid-tempo team, 153rd in terms of total possessions per game. But for Elon, I think that they go out and dominate this game because you've got the top scorer in this game in Chandler Cothrell, 20.5 points, 6.5 boards from 3-point range. He's only shooting about 28% from 3, but then you've got a trio of guys, Kepler Klonzich, Bryson Cockley, along with Randall Pettis, the second, and all three of these guys between 12.1 and 12.8 points per game. They all shoot at least 38.8% from 3, with Klonzich shooting 47% from 3-point. Throws in their 6 boards, 3 assists, steal per contest as a 6'6", a little bit of a do-it-all gadget guy. And then you've got Judge Juwan Carter, who's been able to give you about 8.5 points, 4.5 assists per contest. It's an Elon team as a top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball. Now they're getting absolutely tattooed on defense. They're outside the top 285 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So a Hampton team that has struggled to put points up on the board, they're going to be able to get some clean looks here with Jaquel Gaines-Wyatt along with Michael Ely in the backcourt combining for about 24.5 points per game. Hampton overall shoots 29.2% from 3. They are awful there. They're right around about 300th with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, but they should be able to carve up this Elon team a little bit more on the inside, and they should be able to get some second and third chances as well. But in the end, I just think that Hampton, even though they're a pretty rock-solid defense, they're a top 100 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they're a pedestrian team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Elon has been really good at being able to knife inside, being able to grab those second and third chances, and I think that Elon is able to speed this game up a little bit more and get the job done. Set Elon as a 4-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and me my total 148, so I'm in on the over. 781, 792, North Carolina A&T. They are going to be on the road facing off against Charleston, and Charleston does find themselves as a good-sized favorite here of 10.5 points. So on this game, it is between 154.5 to 156.5, and I did set a total of 151. I do like the under. North Carolina A&T has actually been a top 80 team in the country in terms of rebound percentage. They do a pretty solid job in terms of not allowing second and third chances, and they themselves on offense are a top 120 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Charleston neither here nor there in terms of grabbing offensive rebounds, but they certainly are going to give you a few second and third chances as well. This Charleston team, right now, they're checking in about 175th in terms of their defensive rebound percentage outside the top 201. They're at home, and for this Charleston team, I think that what is going to cost you the over is the fact that this team still shoots less than 30.5% from 3-point range, even though they've gotten healthy with pretty much everyone other than Mr. Dean, which, if you take a look back at him, back when he was over at USC Upstate, he was never a great 3-point shooter to start with. You've got back in the fold Connor Hickman, who's able to give you 12 points per contest. You've got back Kobe Duggan, comes over from Campbell. He's been back for the last 10 games, 10 points per contest. Both of these guys are shooting less than 29.5% from 3-point range. And as a matter of fact, Jalen Counter is your top scorer, 16.5 points, 5.5 boards, 5.5 assists, shoots 34.5% from 3. He's been great. He's the only guy other than Chandler Taylor, who's right now your number 9 scorer on the roster, that is shooting above like 30% from three-point range. Actually, 32.5% from three, but still, man, these guys have absolutely no three-point shooting whatsoever. They're pretty good on the inside, and they have been able to still execute well, a top 175 team in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis. And for North Carolina A&T, it has been a case where this team has been very limited in terms of their offensive options, mainly because they just have not been able to take care of the ball, right around about 300th in terms of turnovers on a per-possession basis on offense. Charleston, though, is well outside the top 275 in terms of generating turnovers, and the one thing that this A&T team has been able to do is get to the free throw line. They're a top 15 team in terms of free throws attempted on a per possession basis, still dealing with the injury to number 2 scorer Luron Walker, but you've had Trent Middleton along Zakamu, Welche, Ume, who've been able to combine for about 24 points per game, and then Lewis Walker is one of the more underrated go-to scorers in the game. 19 points, 5 boards, pair of assists, shoots 37.5% from three-point range. Bryson Ogletree has been able to shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range, and for this A&T team, they're pretty solid on the inside. They're a top 150 team in terms of two-point shooting percentage. What you need to beat them is that they are outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and they themselves are outside the top 300 with their own three-point shooting percentage. But I think that North Carolina A&T does just enough to hold in this game with their interior play, and neither of these teams knocking down threes, I think, costs you the over. So by total 151, like the under, and anything above 9, taking the points with A&T. 783, 784 on the card. You've got Canisius, and they're going to be on the road against Quinnipiac, and the Bobcats of Quinnipiac are a 14-point favorite total on this game. Right now, finding it between a 143.5 to a 144.5, and I did set my total at 141.5, so 142 plus, I'm going to be in on the under. For Canisius, this is just one of the slowest teams you're going to find in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, 356th in the country. And Quinnipiac, they're looking to play a little bit faster. I'm not saying that they're warp speed or anything like that, but 112th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And Quinnipiac has really been able to do a nice job with their three-point shooting. They're shooting 35% overall for the season, but at home, that actually goes down to about 33.8% from the outside. So at home, they're outside the top 225 with that regard. You've got a Canisius unit that has been shooting about 31.3% from three-point range away from home, so probably not going to be finding a ton of great three-point shooting in this game, and where Canisius is really weak is down low. This is a Canisius team that has not been able to execute in the post all season long, as they're outside the top 340 with regards to their two-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 320 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and is a big reason why I did set Quinnipiac here as a favorite of 13.5 points. So right now, seeing what we've got right now in terms of 14, I think that's gone a little bit too far, mainly because you're not going to get a ton of possessions in this game, and it has been a Canisius team that has been a country average team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And for Canisius, they do find themselves in the top 225 in terms of rebound percentage. Michael Everbrow, 8.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. And then you had two main scorers, Khalil Singleton along Brian Adanja, combining for 26.8 points per game. And Singleton has been able to shoot about 39% from three-point range. For Canisius as well, outside the top 275 in terms of their ball security, it's a Quinnipiac team that has been able to clean up a lot of the turnover issues that they had from a season ago. They're now a top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball, but for this Quinnipiac team, they themselves are outside the top 275 with regards to their own two-point shooting percentage, and they are outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage as well. Quinnipiac, they do a nice job playing in their second and third chances, top 150 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They've been outside the top 225 in terms of defensive rebound percentage as well, but you do have Jaden Zimmerman supplying 17 points, shoots 35.5% from three. Asim Jones has actually shot 52% from three. He's right now giving you about 12.5 points per game. You've got Keith Gimme, just one more McKnight, giving you about 5.5 rebounds per game. And then you've had Mari Monroe be down with this three-point shooting from a season ago, but still good versatility with about 2.5 steals, 2.5 assists, 16 points per game. Quinnipiac is a top 150 team in terms of generating turnovers, but I do think that for Quinnipiac, just the relatively rough time that they're having with regards to their interior offense, I think is going to be just enough for you to be able to keep this under and keep Canisius lively. So I did set my line at 13.5, 14 plus. I'm going to be willing to take the points, and I'm in on the underside by total at a 141.5, 795, 796. You've got Drexel, and they're going to be on the road against Campbell, and the Fighting Camels are a 4.5 to a 5-point favorite. Total on this game, it is 143.5, and I like this total under. I set my total at a 141. You had Drexel team as playing at an almighty slog of a pace, 348th in terms of total possessions per game. And Campbell, they're speeding things up a bit, 107th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. It's a Campbell team that just doesn't really shoot it well from three. They're shooting 32% from three now. Big home and road split, 37% from three-point range at home, 29.3% away from home. But it's also a Campbell team that's been outside the top 260 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. Campbell, again, much better offensive team at home rather than away from home. them. They're averaging about 13.9 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. And Drexel, they're just 264th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but should be able to do a nice job owning the paint. They've been a top 125 team with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. It's a Drexel team that does a relatively good job in terms of guarding the arc as well. Teams are shooting just 30% from three-point range against them. That's a top 35 mark in all of college basketball. And for this Campbell team, if they do find themselves in a pressure spot where they need to sink some free throws to be able to get it done, as Drexel is a very physical team, they're only shooting about 71% the free throw line. That's outside the top 185 in the country. You've got DJ Turn It Up Smith, who's been supplying 21 points, 4 boards, and he shoots 37% from three. He's the only their top 5 scorers, if you include Chris Fields, who has been in and out of the lineup, has been shooting above 32.5% from three-point range. Brock Bidwell has actually been able to shoot it really well from three, but he's dealing with injury as well, so they've been really with a limited rotation right now. They're playing pretty much a 6-man rotation, so that's not been great. And Davideus Butka, 13.5 points, 8.5 rebounds. He's the best overall rebounder in this game. But for Drexel, even though you don't really have anyone that gives you over 5.5 rebounds per game, as a matter of fact, Shane Blakeney, one guy in the roster that gives you 5+ boards with 13 points, 5 rebounds per game. They just do a great job as a collective, as you've got 4 different guys with at least 4.3 rebounds per game, and you've been able to get a steal per contest, 9 points, and 37.5% three-point shooting out of Victor Panoff. Now, for Drexel in a tight spot as well, they shoot 64.1% at the free throw line. That's not necessarily amazing, but they do a nice job pushing you off the three-point line. They've also been a top 75 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. I think Drexel is going to turn this into an ugly slog of a game where neither team is able to get points up on the board. Semi-line at 1. So with Campbell, I am going to be willing to take the points with Drexel. Don't want them on the money line, but I did set Drexel as the very, very, very slim underdog, and I'm in on the under. I set my total at a 141, 797, 798. Ryder is on the road against Marist. Marist is a favorite of between 15 to 16 points. So this game is 136.5, and I made a total of 126.5. I'm going to be in on the under. Neither of these teams are looking to push tempo. Ryder's 329th in terms of total possessions per game. Marist 282nd, and Marist just continues to be absolutely tremendous on defense. They're a top 15 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and needless to say, Ryder is not that, but Ryder is also outside the top 340 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, outside the top 340 in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, and it's a Marist team that has been great with generating turnovers. Top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Ryder is outside the top 255 in terms of their own ball security. And for Ryder, they have been a little bit better on offense recently. They were able to put up 81 points against St. Peter's, and they had that outburst against Manhattan as well. But those are two teams that could be a little bit hit or miss on defense, especially Manhattan. And right now, you've only got two guys that give you over 7.2 points per game. Flash Burton along Zion Cruz. They combine for about 27.4 points per game, and between the two of them, they shoot about 29% from three-point range. But this is also a Ryder team that has been okay with regards to rebounding. They're honestly a top 195 team with regards to overall rebound percentage, top 175 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, as you've got Caleb Smith, Shamani Fuller, who've been able to combine for about 13.5 rebounds per game between the two of them, only about 14 points per game as well. But I do think that for this Marist team, they're going to be able to go out there and dominate this game, as I really like what you've been able to get out of Justin Menard in the backcourt. 10.5 points, 3.5 assists. He shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. Rashawn Blackwell shoots 35% from three, and also 95% the free throw line. If Marist needs to sink free throws, they're a top 10 team in the country. They shoot 79.4% at the free throw line. Marist, they themselves only shoot about 32% from three, but being in the top 40 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, generating the turnovers like they do, it's a Marist team that has been outside the top 275 with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. So I think that you get a massive slog of a game, but with having so much depth with this team, guys like Jaden Collins, Jaden Daughtry, who both been able to give you 5.5 to 6.5 points per contest. And as a matter of fact, for this Marist team, you've got essentially 9 different guys to give you at least 4.7 points per game. I think that they go out there, dominate a Ryder team that's been pretty sorry all season long. So semi-line at an 18.5, willing to lay to Earth Marist, and I like the under, semi-total 126.5, 799, 800 on the card. It is Omaha at Hike, and they're going to be on the road facing off against North Dakota, and North Dakota finds themselves as a slim favorite here of 2 to 2.5 points, but total open up at a 154. Now we're seeing this more around about a 149.5 to a 150.5, and at a 151 or less, I'm in on the over. I semi-total at a 151.5. You've got an Omaha group that has been better with their offense recently because they've been dealing with the loss of a few of those guys from the NCAA tournament team from a season ago. But Paul DeBourget, he came over from Miami. He was out for the first 13 or so games of the season. Since he's come in, he's been able to give the team 20 points per game in his 11 games, shooting 43.5% from three. He really elevates this offense, and that's a big reason why I'm willing to take the points with Omaha. I only set my line at a 1.5. You do have a North Dakota team that, by the way, is well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, a top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but Omaha's not bad at taking care of the ball. Country average team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Omaha is not doing a great job on the glass. They are outside the top 275 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. To their credit, not allowing a ton of second and third chances, but they're not giving themselves a lot of second and third chances. But that said, with this Omaha team, they've been a top 125 team with their 2-point shooting percentage outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. That's going to help out a North Dakota team that has not been great with their 3-point shooting this year. They shoot 34%. That's about country average. And we do have Grayson Ullman, who shoots 37% per three, 14 points per game. Eli King, he has been the king of being able to do it all. 12 points, pair of assists, 2.5 steals, 5 boards, but only shoots about 29% from three for North Dakota. In a tight spot, they only shoot 69.5% at the free throw line as well. That's outside the top 255 in all of college basketball. And additionally, for North Dakota, outside the top 320 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They become the classic gamble for turnovers team. I think that Omaha is going to be able to break that pressure. They're going to do a nice job in terms of protecting the ball, and that'll help them be able to get the job done, stay within this number. And I think that as a result, you get a nice high-scoring expose against a pair of teams that are relatively mid-tempo. North Dakota, about 126th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Omaha, 173rd. So at a 151 or less in on the over, and we'll take 2+ here with Omaha. 801, 802 on the card. It is St. Amford, and they are going to be playing us to the Citadel. And the Citadel finds themselves, shock, surprise, surprise, as an underdog here. You're going to be catching with them anywhere between 12 to 13.5 points. 142.5 is the total, and I made a total of a 144.5, so I am in on this total over, mainly because the Citadel is guarding absolutely nobody right now. Citadel's actually been able to do a little bit more on offense. You've got a pair of double-figure scores. They're helping out the cause, but 342nd in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, and you have a Sanford team that is a top 5 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per-possession basis, so they're maximizing possessions. Sanford, they themselves are 297th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, and Sanford, mid-tempo team, 187th in terms of total possessions per game. The Citadel, they're a slow and control team. They're about 325th in the country, and for the Citadel, you do have Solo Adbasi, who I think is actually going to be able to do a solid job down low. He's been able to give this team right around about 6.5 boards, 8 points per game, and then you have Braxton Williams, Christian Moore, who do give you more combined 24.9 points per game, and between the two of them, they're honestly shooting about 36.5 to 37% from 3-point range, but it is also a Citadel team that is not going to put you under any duress whatsoever. They're outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and I think that the Sanford unit is going to be able to go out there and lay base them, especially with having Jaden Booth being able to just really take over this game. One of the better mid-major scorers out there, 20.5 points, 2.5 assists, shoots 42% per three, and for a Sanford team that only shoots 67.2% at the free throw line, he shoots 89% at the charity stripe, and then you've got Norris Squared and Keaton and Cade Norris. These two guys combined for about 18.5 points per game, with Cade Norris shoots 35% per three, Keaton 4.5 assists per contest. It is a Sanford team that has been able to execute relatively well down low. They've been a top 175 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, top 200 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. They just really get up from three. They're allowing teams to shoot over 36% per three. That's outside the top 300 in all of college basketball, but this is a Citadel team that they themselves, they shoot less than 33.5% from 3-point range, and you look at the Citadel, and they are giving it up from the outside as well. They're allowing teams to shoot about 34.5% from 3-point range, and you get this Citadel team in a roadside shoot court setting, they are only shooting about 32.5% from 3-point range. So I do think that Sanford finds a way to get the job done, and the overall lack of efficiency for the Citadel on defense helps you out with the over. So my line at 14.5, willing to lay with Sanford, and I like the over. So my total at a 144.5. 803, 804, Lindenwood is on the road against a Little Rock, and Little Rock does find themselves in most spots as a 1-point favorite to a 1-point dog, so depends upon your book there. Total saying between 151 to 152.5, and I made Lindenwood the 3.5-point favorite. So whether that be as a very small favorite or a very small dog, I am going to be in on Lindenwood, as it's a Lindenwood team has been very good with regards to their defense. They're a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home. Now, Lindenwood is not shooting well from three. They shoot 24.9% from 3-point range away from home. That is a bottom 5 mark in all of college basketball, but you've got a Little Rock team that's outside the top 275 in terms of ball security, and it's a Lindenwood team that has been good in terms of generating turnovers, 84th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Now, to the credit of Little Rock, they're actually really good in terms of generating turnovers, 25th in the country with this regard, but in their home setting, they are really a whole heck of a lot worse. Like, they're outside the top 100 in terms of generating turnovers on a per possession basis at home. They're much better away from home. I'm not sure why, but for Lindenwood, they should be able to take over this game. You've got a trio of guys, Dontrez Williams, Aeneas Fulton, and Jadis Jones, who have all been able to give you at least 15.3 points per contest between Futrell along with Jones. They combine for about 14 rebounds per game, and Futrell shoots 37.5% per three. He's pretty much the lone guy on the roster, other than the currently injured Jeremiah Tolan, who shoots above 31% from 3-point range, but for this Lindenwood team, they're very much looking to drive the ball inside. They're a top 15 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range, and they've been a top 200 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage, top 125 team in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage as well, so they do a nice job dominating there. Now, this is a Lindenwood team that's outside the top 250 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but it's a Little Rock team that they have been outside the top 300 with regards to defensive rebound percentage as well, and for Little Rock in a pressure spot, they shoot 68% the free throw line. Lindenwood right around about 67% the free throw line, so even though you're going to get possessions in this game, Lindenwood is a top 25 team in terms of total possessions per game. That's a dead possessions, especially with Little Rock turning the ball over 14 times per game. They're outside the top 330 in terms of their ball security, and they're hovering right around about 300th with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, and they actually shoot 36% from 3, but they're outside the top 300 in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3. You've got Jonathan Lawson, who gives you 16.5 points, 4 assists per contest, shoots 37.5% for 3. Gachi Nazai has been able to shoot 43% from 3, 11.5 points per contest. Braxton Bayless shoots 38.5% from 3, 11.5 points per game, but they just don't shoot threes. I don't get it with this team. You've got Tungan Gakic down low being able to give you about 5.5 boards, blocking half per contest. I think that you get a little bit of a, shall we say, sloppy game, but in the end, I do think that Lindenwood holds up on defense, gets the job done. I did set my line at a 3.5, so I'm going to take Lindenwood as a slight favorite / an underdog, and like the under, set my total 145.5, 805, 806. It is Denver, and they're going to be on the road against North Dakota State, and Denver is going to look to pioneer a cover as they do find themselves as a sizable underdog here of 11 to 11.5 points. Totals between 159 to 161.5, and with Denver, I did set them as a underdog here of 11.5 points, so I am going to be willing to lay up to 11 with North Dakota State. Now for Denver, they have played pretty much all but 2 of their games to the over, and I did set my total at a 155.5. You've got a North Dakota State team that is neither fast nor slow. In terms of total possessions, ranked 184th in the country. Denver is a relatively mid-tempo team as well at about 143rd in terms of total possessions per game. This is a North Dakota State team that has really fallen off a little bit with regards to their 3-point shooting. They become a country average team there, but they're really generating a lot of turnovers right now. For North Dakota State, in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, they are 41st in all of college basketball. Denver is not this. They are 352nd, and Denver is outside the top 340 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but for Denver, they have been a top 80 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and right now they are 35th in the country in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. But that 42.3% 3-point shooting percentage at home goes down to 32.6% away from home, so that's been a big issue. North Dakota State, they've been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of guarding the perimeter, and for North Dakota State, they have become a top 175 team in terms of their points allowed on a per possession basis. You've got a quartet of guys that are giving between 10.7 and 13.5 points per contest, and Trayson Anderson, Damari Wheeler-Thomas, Davion Kaysen, and Makai Strickland. Strickland doesn't give you any sort of 3-point shooting, but Anderson and Carson, they combine to shoot about 38% from 3-point range. You've been able to have these two guys combine for about 12.5 rebounds per game, and North Dakota State doing a really good job in terms of not allowing second and third chances. Top 45 team with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. They do give it up a little bit from the outside, but this has been a North Dakota State team that's been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of controlling games with being able to generate those turnovers. This is a North Dakota State team that they themselves have really ascended here in conference play with their 3-point shooting. They're shooting 39.6% from 3-point range in conference play. They've done a nice job holding up down low, as well as with regards to rebound percentage. They've been the top team in the Summit League thus far, and I do think that that's going to be enough for them to be able to get the job done here, and I think that that holds down a Denver unit that has had quite a few explosive scorers. You've got Carson Johnson give you about 19.5 points on 41% 3-point shooting. Zane Nelson, he's zany with his 49% 3-point shooting, but you only have 2 guys on the roster that give you over 4 rebounds per game. Jeremiah Burke, who's been able to give you 15 points, 5.5 boards, and then Gabe Oldham, 6 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. I think the Denver gets tied up a little bit more with regards to their offense, and the defense just does not hold up here, so semi-total 155.5. I like the under, and with North Dakota State, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 11 with them. 807, 808 on the card. It's Abilene Christian on the road against Utah Valley, and Utah Valley is a double-figure favorite here of anywhere between 13 to 13.5 points. 147 to 148.5 is the total, and made my total a 144.5. I do like the under. You've got an Abilene Christian team that is a relatively mid-tempo team, 220th in terms of total possessions per game, and for Utah Valley, they've been looking to push a little bit more tempo, 73rd in terms of total possessions per game, and Utah Valley, neither here nor there with their 3-point shooting at about 33.8%. That's about country average, and Abilene Christian has been able to do a solid job holding up on defense, but on offense, they're outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Abilene Christian back in the top 15 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Overall, they're just 200th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, mainly because they do gamble for turnovers, and as a result, they do leave themselves very open to giving up some 3-point looks, right now Abilene Christian is right around about 363rd in the country, with allowing teams to shoot 39.5% from 3-point range. But the good news for them is that they face off against a Utah Valley team that has really been turning the ball over a ton. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, 351st in all of college basketball. I did, as a result, make my line 12.5, so I'm willing to take 13 plus here with Abilene Christian. And for Abilene Christian, they've also been a better team on the defensive glass. They've been a top 80 team with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. Braden Hubbard has been the main man with about 15 points, 5 boards, pair of assists, pair of steals, shoots 32% from 3. And then you've got Yanel Rivera, who's been able to give you about 36% 3-point shooting, 7.5 points per game. Has dealt with a little bit of an ailment, but he's been able to return to the floor. He's looked very solid in the last few games, so should be all good to go here. And this is a team that very much pile drives you inside. For this Abilene Christian team, even though they really do give it up from 3-point range, they're a top 30 team in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from 2-point range. And Utah Valley, they are a really good interior offense. They're a top 35 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. But again, the turnovers I think are going to be rampant in this game, because Utah Valley, they themselves are a top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Abilene Christian has been outside the top 275 in terms of their ball security. So I think that you get a lot of wasted possessions here, though Jackson Holcomb, he's been tremendous for this Utah Valley team, 16 points, 7.5 boards, pair of steals per contest. And then you've got Trayvon Leonard, about 12 points, 2 steals, 6 assists, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point. Shyler Hendricks is a 45.5% 3-point shooter, but I do think that the overall sloppiness in this game going to be a little bit costly, and I do think that with Abilene Christian being a much better defensive rebound team than they have been in the past, they do just enough to be able to hold in there. So semi line at 12.5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Abilene Christian, and I'm in on the under semi total at a 144.5. 809, 810 on the card. It is Morehead St, and they're going to be on the road against Southeast Missouri State. Southeast Missouri State between a 7.5 to an 8-point favorite. Total on this game between 146 and 147.5. Me, my total 141.5. I'm going to be in on the under. You've had a Southeast Missouri State team that's been looking to push a little bit of tempo, 148th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Morehead State overall is 222nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but if you look since conference play, that's been outside the top 275. They have been throttled downward, and for Morehead State, they do have one main forte. They're good in terms of being able to grab second and third chances, 27th in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but it's a unit that is outside the top 225 with their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentages, and they don't really take care of the ball. They're outside the top 250 in terms of ball security, and Southeast Missouri State has been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. It is a Southeast Missouri State team that will put you on the free throw line. They're a top 20 team in terms of fouls given on a per possession basis, and Morehead State, they shoot 72% of the free throw line. Neither here nor there. You've got Davion Cunningham and George Marshall in the backcourt combined for about 25.5 points per game, and both shooting an identical 33.9% from 3-point. And then your main man in terms of being able to give you boards is Sean Carroll, carrolling all the way to 10 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. But I do think that Southeast Missouri State is going to be able to get the job done. I did set them as a favorite here of 9.5 points, mainly because, for one, they do such a great job in terms of being able to win that turnover battle. But additionally, you've just got a lot of guys that contribute to the cause. Right now, you got 5 different guys between 8.8 and 14.5 points per game, with Luke Almodovar being that top scorer of 14.5 points, shoots about 33.5% from 3, and then you've got Brandon Terry shooting 41% from 3. Overall for the season, Southeast Missouri State, they shoot 30.4% from 3. That is well outside the top 320 in all of college basketball, but in conference play, doesn't sound like much, but they're up to about 33.5% 3-point shooting. That's about mid-tier there, and they've been able to execute on the inside. They're a top 125 team in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, and for all that Morehead State does really well with regards to hitting the boards and everything like that, they're outside the top 175 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're getting blasted from 3. They're outside the top 300 with that regard as well, but with this Southeast Missouri State team really just not allowing second and third chances, being a top 55 team with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, having just a holes greater than some of its parts collective there, as they've only got 2 guys in Marquise Bell and Brandon Terry that give you over 4 rebounds per game, but everyone just does their part in terms of not allowing those second and third chances. They do a nice job winning the turnover battle. I think that that's just enough for Southeast Missouri State to keep this a lower scoring game and be able to get the job done. Semi-line at 9.5, one delay of Southeast Missouri State, and I like the under. Semi-total 141.5, 811, 812. Western Illinois, they're going to be on the road against Tennessee Tech, and Tennessee Tech does find themselves as a good size favorite here of 8 to 8.5 points. 141.5 to 143.5 is a total line. I set a total here of a 140.5, so I do like the under. You've got a Western Illinois team that they are not good on defense. They're well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're also outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they're a relatively slow team, 266th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You do have a Tennessee Tech squad that is very mid-tempo, 183rd in terms of total possessions per game, and they themselves have just not been good in the turnover battle. 333rd in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, Western Illinois, honestly, not the world's worst team at taking care of the ball. 227th with this regard, and I do like what Isaiah Griffith has been able to bring to the table. He comes on over from Idaho State. He's been supplying about 11.5 points, 4 boards, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point. And then Lucas Lorenzen, your top scorer, 15 points, shoots 80% at the free throw line, 4 boards, shoots about 31% from 3. These guys have been relatively solid, but Western Illinois is outside the top 335 in terms of both their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Honestly, not the world's worst team at hitting the offensive boards. They've been a top 245 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage. They have been having a tough time on the defensive boards, though, as they're overall outside the top 225 with regards to overall rebound percentage. This is a Tennessee Tech team that they themselves have a lot of warts, and they've been really looking for that go-to scorer. As of right now, you've only got 2 guys that will be able to give this team double figures in Mr. Judgewan Nichols along with Mekhi Cameron. They've been able to combine for about 22 points per contest, and Danny Pounds has been able to do so as well. He's been dealing with a little bit of injury, but should be good to go in this game, but it has been a unit that has been shooting only about 32% from 3. That's outside the top 250 in all of college basketball. For Tennessee Tech, to their credit, they become a top 225 team in terms of overall rebound percentage, but again, those 14 turnovers per game have not been great. They're a country average team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They give it up a little bit from 3-point range, but again, Western Illinois, they don't have any sort of 3-point shooting, so I do think that even though Tennessee Tech is a mid-tempo team, that you're going to get a little bit of slowdown game. I did set my line as a result at an 8.5, so I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the under as I've made my total at 140.5, and 8 is my absolute max buy point on Tennessee Tech, but I'm willing to lay 8 with them. 8-13, 8-14. The Ohio State University on the road against Maryland. Maryland is a home underdog here of 6.5 to 7.5 points. 151.5 is the total, and I do like this total under. I did set my total here at a 146.5, as Maryland is just not doing their part on offense. They are outside the top 360 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, Maryland has been a top 125 team in terms of generating turnovers at home, but they're also about 300th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so they're really not doing a whole heck of a lot right. And for this Ohio State team, they've been a top 100 team in terms of taking care of the ball, and for Ohio State, they're really good with regards to their 3-point shooting defense, top 35 team with that regard, and that becomes all the bigger in this game because Maryland is not executing down low. If you look at them overall for the season, they're right now 327th with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. That falls outside the top 335 at home, and I recognize that Maryland has dealt with a few ailments, and they've been able to overcome them, get quite a few of their guys back, like Solomon Washington, though they're still dealing with a Pharrell Payne injury, and that's been a lot of pain for them. You've got David Hewitt along Darius Adams, the double Ds, who've been able to combine for about 27 points per game, and with Hewitt, he's been able to give you about 3 assists, shoots 38% from 3, but I mean, the team as a whole, they only shoot about 32.5% from 3-point range. It really doesn't get a whole heck of a lot better at home, and for Maryland, they're outside the top 235 with regards to their own ball security, and for Ohio State, I could only set them here as a 6.5 point favorite, so I'm willing to take 7+ with Maryland, mainly because this is a team that they themselves don't give themselves a lot of second and third chances. Both of these teams outside the top 125 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. You do have an Ohio State team that does shoot 78.8% the free throw line. That is a top 15 mark in the country, but they become a country average 3-point shooting team as well, even though you've got John Mobley, Bruce Thornton, both shooting above 40% from 3, with Thornton 19.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists. Mobley is able to give you about 16 points per contest as well. You've had Miles Rice on the flip side for Maryland deal with a little bit of injury, but when he's been out there, he's been relatively solid. But it is also a Ohio State team that has been rather fragile with their interior defense. They've been outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Do you think that this is going to be a mid-tempo game for Maryland? They are about 163rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Ohio State just outside the top 190. I do think that both defenses will be able to step up a little bit, and I do think that with Ohio State, even though they're good at the free throw line, them not putting you under duress outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis allows Maryland to be able to remain lively. So at 7+ won't take the points with Maryland, and I'm in on the under. I did set my total at a 146.5, 8-15, 8-16. You've got Southern Indiana on the road against UT Martin, and UT Martin is finding themselves as a good-sized favorite here of 11 points. So on this game is currently about a 132.5 to a 133.5, and made my total a 135. So at a 134.5 or less, I'm going to be in on this total over, mainly because I just think that you get enough possessions for the over. You got a Southern Indiana team that, yes, they have slowed down since the beginning part of the season, but in terms of total possessions per game, this is still a team that ranks 77th in all of college basketball in games played away from home. They ascended to the top 70, and you do have a UT Martin team that's rather slow in control, 293rd in terms of total possessions per game, and Martin has been outside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but pretty much all their top scorers have dealt with injuries thus far this season. They have been able to get healthy healthier as the season has gone along. But I do think that for Southern Indiana, they do an okay job in terms of holding in there. They've been a team that's dealt with turnovers, and really both of these teams have. Southern Indiana outside the top 255 in terms of their ball security. UT Martin, a bottom 20 team in terms of their ball security, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. And for UT Martin, their forte has been three-point shooting defense. They are a top 40 team in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. For Southern Indiana, they have been outside the top 300 with regards to both their two-point and three-point shooting percentage, but now they're getting back Amari Brown. He was missing for about 14 games this season. He has been able to give the team 11 plus points in now 4 out of the last 5 games, so I think that he's going to be able to elevate this offense moving forward. Now, I will say in 4 out of the last 5 games, they've been held to 67 points or fewer, including 51 points in an overtime game against Eastern Illinois. That's not great, to say the least, but should be able to team up with Ismail El Habib, who's been able to give you about 16 points. He throws in there a trio of assists per game. Gardale Bailey, 13.5 points, 5.5 boards, and Tolu Samuels has been able to give you about 8.5 rebounds per game as well. And when it comes to the UT Martin side of things, you have been able to get a lot of production out of Andre Abramovich. Hopefully I got that correct, as he's been able to do a nice job and has been like the lone guy that has not gotten injured for this UT Martin team, as he's been supplying you with about 15 points, 8 rebounds per game, and from 3-point he does cast away at about 38%. UT Martin is hovering right around about 300th with their own 3-point shooting percentage at about 31.5%, but they do a nice job controlling things on the inside. They've been a top 35 team with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. They're a top 150 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, and they're a top 75 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. And for UT Martin, they have been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. It's hard to be able to trust them on this line, though, because they do shoot just 67.5% at the free throw line. That is outside the top 10 in all of college basketball, and I do think that for UT Martin, they're going to do a solid job on defense, but I think that you get just enough possessions here for the over, and this is a Southern Indiana team that has honestly not been awful on defense. They've been a top 75 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, but I do think that for Southern Indiana, they themselves being outside the top 350 with regards to their free throw shooting percentage, that's going to be a little bit of an issue as well. But I do think that with Southern Indiana not generating a lot of turnovers, that allows for some more clean possessions for UT Martin to be able to get you that over. So I told 135, I like the over, and anything above 9, taking the points with Southern Indiana. 8-17, 8-18, it's Tennessee State, and they're going to be playing us to Eastern Illinois, and Eastern Illinois finds themselves as a bit of an underdog here, as they're going to be catching between 10.5 and 9.5 points. So on this game, between 143.5 to 145.5, and I did set a total of 143.5, so 143.5 plus. I do like the under. You've got an Eastern Illinois team that has been looking to play quite slow and controlled in terms of total possessions per game, 264th in the country. Meanwhile, for Tennessee State, they are not slow and controlled. Tennessee State is one of the faster mid-major teams that you're going to find in the country right now, about 43rd in terms of total possessions per game, but their games involve quite a few dead possessions, and really both of these teams have a strength of being able to generate turnovers. For Tennessee State, 59th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Eastern Illinois, 55th, so I do think that you're going to have a lot of, shall we say, dead possessions in this game, which is why I'm in on the under, and that's a big reason why I'm going to be willing to take the points with Eastern Illinois. Eastern Illinois has been a rough offense. They're outside the top 280 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but much of the season they were playing without Andre 3000 Washington. He missed the first 9 games of the season, and he's become their number 2 scorer. 10 points, a steal per contest. Now, he doesn't shoot it well from 3, and Eastern Illinois is outside the top 250 with their 3-point shooting percentage at 32.5% from the outside, and this team is getting blasted on the inside. They're outside the top 260 with regards to their opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, top 300 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, and been well outside the top 250 with regards to their rebound percentage as well. But that said, they do a pretty solid job in terms of generating those turnovers, and you've been able to have Cooper Jacoby give you 9.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. For Tennessee State, they're going to be able to absolutely own things down low, and I love the versatility that you've been able to get out of Aaron Namakura. He's right now giving you 5 boards, 17.5 points, 3 assists, 3 steals, shoots about 33% from 3. Tennessee State still fragile with their 3-point shooting. They're outside the top 275 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. They do look to pile drive the ball inside. They're a top 50 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range. Country average team with their own 2-point shooting percentage, and then in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, they're about country average, both with regards to 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. This team has been able to do a nice job giving themselves second and third chances, as they're a top 75 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but I mean, both of these teams are outside the top 250 in terms of their own turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Tennessee State in a pressure spot, they shoot about 73.5% of the free throw line. Neither here nor there. Dante Harris and Travis Harper have been your main guys in the backcourt. Harper, 17.5 points, shoots 39.5% from 3. Harris shoots 31% from 3, but I do think that Eastern Illinois is a little bit of better offense than what you've seen towards the beginning part of the season with getting back Mr. Andre Washington, and then Zion Fruster has been able to give you about 15 points per game, dealt with a little bit of injury, but should be good to go here. I think that that's enough for Eastern Illinois to remain lively in a game where I think that there's just going to be a bunch bunch of turnovers. Semi-line at 9, so 9.5 plus will take the points with Eastern Illinois, and 143.5 or higher. I do like the under. 8:19, 8:20 on the card. It is Northern Colorado. They're going to be on the road against Weber State, and Weber State is between a 1 to a 1.5 point underdog. Total on this game, you're going to be getting that between 162.5 to 163, and it's out of 12, 161. I like the under. Northern Colorado has been able to do a really good job in terms of not allowing second and third chances. Top 50 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and then you got a Weber State team that has been a top 125 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Now, Northern Colorado, I think that they win this game outright because they have been able to do a better job down low in terms of their two-point shooting percentage. They are a top 50 team in all of college basketball, but I set my line at a very narrow one. Pretty much, I'm going to be willing to take whoever the underdog is. If Northern Colorado becomes the underdog, I'm just going to take them on the money line. With Weber State 1.5 plus, that becomes my buy point with them. As for Weber State, they have been dealing with a few injuries, and now they've got back their top three-point shooter in, I always try to say the same correctly, Vajami Vartinen, who's been able to give you 12 points, shoots 40% from three-pointers, and then Nigel Burris has been able to give you nice versatility, 10 points, 5 rebounds per game. It's a Weber State team that they themselves have been a top 80 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so you're not going to get a ton of second and third chances in this game. At Weber State, they do shoot about 36% from three-pointers, significantly better at home. They're a top 50 team. For Weber State, their kryptonite has been inside. They're outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage, so that's been a little bit of an issue, but they're a top 135 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and you've been able to have Tijai Sanai in terms of your top scorer being able to really step up, 16 points, shoots about 40% from three-point. Flip side, you've got a Northern Colorado team that has been able to get a lot out of Quinn Danker. He comes over from Idaho, and he's been a very underrated facilitator, 7 assists, 18 points, he's in the mid-30s from three-points, and then Zach Flock off the ball, 46% three-point shooter, 13 points per game. You get about 6 boards, 16 points out of Brock Wisney, throws in their 3 assists, shoots 38% from three. For a Northern Colorado team that they're not going to put you under duress. They're outside the top 330 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they are rough on the inside. They're inside the top 2 is 75 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, but have been a good three-point shooting defense. They're a top 100 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They themselves shoot about 36.5% from three, so you've got a pair of teams that shoot well from three, but a pair of teams that guard it relatively well from three, and Northern Colorado doesn't get to the free throw line. They're a bottom 35 team in terms of free throws attempted on a per possession basis. I think that keeps Weber State lively. Like I said, splitting the atom, I set Northern Colorado as the 1-point favorite, so anything above 1, I'm willing to take the points with Weber State. I set my total at 161, so 161.5 plus, I'm in on the under. 821, 822. It is Idaho, and they're going to be on the road against Montana State, and Montana State does find themselves as a pretty good-sized favorite here of 3 to 3.5 points on this game. It is 147, and I set my line at 5.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Montana State. You've got a pair of teams that are not really going to be looking to push a ton of tempo. Idaho is a little bit faster than they have been in the past, 160th in terms of total possessions per game. Montana State is 265th, and it's a Montana State team that has been able to do a pretty solid job on the inside. They're a top 150 team with regards to their two-point shooting percentage, and Idaho's right around about 160th, so both of these teams are neither here nor there. For Idaho, where you've been able to hurt them in the past has been three-point shooting percentage, as for Idaho, they have been a team that's always been rough with regards to their three-point shooting defense. They're about 237th this season, and for Montana State, they've got an interesting split in which they allow opponents to shoot 38% for three-points at home, 32.5% away from home. I do think that that's going to be starting to iron out just a little bit, and this Idaho team, they're not really going to put you under duress in terms of generating turnovers, but they are a team that ranks in the top 30 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so not a lot of second and third chances to be had here. Now, I did set Montana State as a favorite of 5.5 points because they do shoot about 38% from three-points at home, and for Idaho away from home, they only shoot about 33.2% from the outside, and it has been an Idaho team that has had a lot of just relatively solid collective contributors this season, a quartet of guys that give between 10.9 and 14.2 points per contest, with Jackson Rasmussen, 14 points, 4.5 boards. You've got Colton Mitchell shooting 38% for three with 14 points per game. Isaiah Brickner, he actually shoots 50% for three. He throws in there about 10.5 points per game, and then Brody Woodbury, about 5.5 rebounds per game down low. That's a big reason why teams are not grabbing a lot of second and third chances, but with not putting teams under too much stress, that is going to be able to help out a Montana State group that they do the little things well. They have been a top 100 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, top 100 team with their free throw shooting percentage at about 75.7%, hovering right around about 100th in the country with regards to their own two-point shooting percentage at home as well, with Patrick McMahon, Jed Miller combining for 28 points per game, and Miller shoots 42.5% from three. He's the one guy in the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, but Idaho doesn't necessarily have that dominant rebounder either. You've had Davion Brown step in there, shoot about 80% of the free throw line, 12.5 points, shoots 43% from three-point range. With this Idaho State team, they're not really going to put you under too much stress either, but they've been a top 225 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. And Montana State, they themselves, top 125 team in terms of their defensive rebound percentage as well. So I think that that's enough to be able to get it done in a little bit of a lower scoring game. Semi-total 143.5. I like the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 5 with Montana State. 823, 824. Memphis is on the road against UAB, and the Blazers of UAB are a 1-1.5 point favorite. Totals anywhere between 151.5 to 153, and I'd like the under. I did set my total at a 148.5. You've got a Memphis team that just has not been able to put points up on the board. They're playing at a fast pace, 65th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. UAB, they themselves are looking to play at a fast pace as well, 35th in the country. A little bit of a warp set. They played a few overtime games, but for Memphis, 260th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They away from home shoot just 30.8% from three, and the turnovers are the issue. Outside the top 325 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, UAB is a top 10 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Now, UAB does not shoot it well from three, 351st at 28.6%, but they're also a top 10 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range. So they know that they don't shoot it well from three, so they're not going to take a lot of threes. And for UAB, you've been able to have Jacob Meyer, Chance Westery, be able to combine for about 29 points per game. Neither of these guys shoot above 30% from three, but with Westery, 4.5 assists per game. UAB has been able to do a dominant job on the glass as well. They're a top 80 team with regards to overall rebound percentage, top 50 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and Memphis outside the top 320 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They're allowing a lot of second and third chances. Aaron Bradshaw has just been a big fat disappointment, only giving you about 4 rebounds per game. Doug McDaniels, your lone double-figure scorer with about 15 points, pair of steals, 5 assists, shoots in the mid-30s from three, but you don't have a lot of pizzazz outside of that. With having Hassan Abdul-Hakim coming off of injury, not necessarily giving you a ton, you've been able to have Julius Threadwell be able to give you about 8 or 9 points per contest, but still, on the flip side for UAB, you've been able to get good production out of Daniel Rivera, who's been able to give you 11.5 points, 6.5 boards per contest, actually shoots in the mid-30s from three. Kyron Lindsey gives you 7 rebounds per game. Evan Chapman throws in their 8 boards per contest, so this UAB team does a great job down low. They're only shooting about 71% of the free throw line. That's hovering right around about 225th in the country, so needs a little bit of work there, but they've been a top 175 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They are pretty solid in terms of getting to the free throw line as well, and with this UAB team taking care of the ball the way that they do, I think that they take it to a Memphis team that just has not been able to execute on offense. Like the under, semi-total 148.5, and made UAB the 4.5 point favorite, so we'll delay the 1 to 1.5. 825, 826, Jacksonville State is on the road against Western Kentucky, and Western Kentucky is a mid-tier favorite here of between 4.5 to 5 points. 139.5 is the total. Set a total of 141.5. I like the over. Now, for Western Kentucky, they have been dealing with a rash of injuries, and that has slowed them down a little bit, but even with that, they're still 49th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Jacksonville State, 324th in terms of total possessions per game, and for Jacksonville State, they do see a massive dip in their 3-point shooting percentage when they're away from home rather than at home. They shoot over 39% per 3-point range at home, 29.3% in a road/neutral court venue, so that's interesting to take a look at, to say the least, but they're not going to be under too much stress against a Western Kentucky team that they have been outside the top 175 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis at home. And for Jacksonville State, you've got the top scorer in this game, Mustafa El Montequil, who's been able to supply 18.5 points, 7.5 boards per contest, and then you've got a pair of guys in Jacoby Hill and AC Bryan off the ball that combine for about 22 points per game. You have to like the fact that Bryan shoots 40% from three, Hill shoots 38.5% from the outside. Now, in a tight spot, this Jacksonville State team, they shoot 68.3% of the free throw line. That is outside the top 3 in all of college basketball, but they're really good with regards to their opponent shooting percentages. They've become a little bit of a better team in terms of generating turnovers, but the way that this Ray Harper defense works is that they're just interested in not giving you good looks whatsoever. For Jacksonville State, they are a top 135 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, top 100 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and this has been a Western Kentucky team that just has not executed on the inside. They're outside the top 275 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. They're just 282nd with their 3-point shooting percentage, albeit they shoot 35.5% from 3-point range at home compared to about 28.5% away from home. But Western Kentucky has been dealing with an injury to Tegan Moore, who's been their top scorer and really do-it-all guy thus far this season. 17 points, 6 boards, shoots in the mid-30s from 3 points. You do have Ryan Myers, who shoots 40% per 3 of 10 points per game, and then Armello Boone, Grant Newell. These two guys combine for about 23 points per game. Between the two of them, you're going to get about 11 rebounds per game. But Brian Salbungwe, one of your top rebounders, is dealing with injury. Terry Mardu, he was giving you about 3.5 assists per game. He's been dealing with ailment as well. Should be good to go in this one. He returned about a week or so ago, so that helps out the backcourt a little bit, but having that more injury hurts, and it is a Western Kentucky team that has been a above average team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but they're giving up a lot of second and third chances on the glass themselves. They've been really giving it up from 3-point range outside the top 240 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, so interesting circumstance here. I do think that this is close enough for late fouls, and Western Kentucky, top 75 team in terms of getting to the free throw line. They're a top 50 team in terms of giving up free throw attempts as well. So my total at a 141.5. I'm going to be in on the over. And for Western Kentucky, I do think that with Jacksonville State shooting it so badly at the free throw line, that helps them be able to get the job done. I'm willing to lay up to 5 here with Western Kentucky. 827, 828 on the board. You've got UC Santa Barbara. They're going to be on the road against UC Davis. UC Davis is a 2 to 2.5 point home underdog. Totals between 146 to 148. Did sub by total 145.5. I like the under for Santa Barbara. This team is outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're playing very super slow. 275th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. UC Davis has really spread themselves up. They're up to about 74th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but UC Davis seems, as per usual, they involve a lot of turnovers for UC Davis. They've had a tough time taking care of the ball. They're outside the top 270 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. On defense, top 65 team in terms of generating turnovers, and you got Niles Cooper, Connor Sevilla, who combine for 27.8 points per game, and Sevilla shoots 44.5% from three for a UC Davis team that all of a sudden is shooting about 36.5% from three-point. That's a top 75 mark in the country, and UC Santa Barbara right now is shooting 39% from three. That is 12th in the country, so they've been able to do a nice job there. It is a Santa Barbara team that also doesn't allow a lot of second and third chances, so for UC Davis, they were outside the top 275 in terms of their offensive rebound percentage to begin with. For Santa Barbara right now, they're allowing teams to be able to shoot 35.9% from three, but interestingly, it actually goes down to 35.2% away from home. And UC Davis, right now, they're allowing teams to shoot 29.5% from three-point at home, 40.8% away from home. I think that we're going to see that iron out a little bit, but I do think that Santa Barbara is going to be able to do a good job winning from within, and that's a big reason why I did set them as a 2.5 point favorite. As right now, one guy that gives you over 5 rebounds per game is Nico Odokac with about 10 points, 5.5 boards, block and a half per contest, but for Davis, they do leave themselves vulnerable on the inside, being outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. And then on the Santa Barbara side, you've got Ada Mahaney, who's able to take over a game with giving you 14.5 points on 42% 3-point shooting. They dealt with an injury to Mario Little, but he's back, main facilitator with about 4.5 assists, 12 points per game. And then you've got a trio of other guys, Colin Smith, CJ Shaw, and Zion Sensley, all between 10.5 and 11.5 points per game, with Sensley being able to fly about 7 rebounds per game. It's a Santa Barbara team that in a pressure spot, they shoot 76% at the free throw line. That's a top 70 mark in the country. Now, they are vulnerable on the inside as well. They're outside the top 250 with regards to opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, but the defense has been getting better as the season has been going along. It's still very much a work in progress, but had to like what you saw in terms of holding Fullerton to fewer than 70 points. They held UC San Diego to fewer than 50 points, and the identity of this program, really ever since Joe Pasternak took over, is playing relatively slow, good defense. I feel like they're getting back to that. So at a 146 plus, I'm in on the under. I'm Santa Barbara. I'm going to be willing to lay up to a deuce with them. 829, 830. Northern Arizona is going to be on the road against Idaho State, and the Bengals, who find themselves as a pretty sizable favorite here. As with Idaho State, you're laying between 8 to 8.5 points on this game, between 141.5 to 144.5, and I did set my total at 143.5. Right now, I'm seeing this start to dive down to more like the 141, 141.5 number, and anything of a 143 or less, I'm going to be in on the over. You do have a Northern Arizona team that's pretty slow and controlled. They're outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, but man, these guys are not doing a great job in terms of guarding anything. They're outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're allowing teams to shoot 38.3% from 3-point shot. It's a bottom 30 mark in the country, and for Northern Arizona, they don't give themselves second chances. They're outside the top 300 with regards to offensive rebound percentage, but they as a collective shoot over 37% from three. That is a top 45 mark in the country, as they deal with the injury to their top scorer, Zach Davidson, 14 points, 5 rebounds per game, and that's led to a guard-heavy lineup, as you got Ryan Abelman, who is able, to be able to give you 37% 3-point shooting, 11 points per game. Isaiah Shaw, 9 points per game, shoots 42% from three. Arnie Ojanek has been able to give you about 8 points. He shoots 37% from three. So you've got a lot of good 3-point shooting for this team, and you have absolutely nothing down low. They're outside the top 200 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. And it's an Iowa State team that is a top 135 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they average more than 13 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home, and they're not going to put you under duress. Idaho State right around about 300th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They've really fallen outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Good news for them is that they've been a top 100 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but for Idaho State, this is a team that does rank in the top 125 in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. They shoot about 34.5% from three. That's country average, but that goes close to 40% at home, with Connor Hellenbeck and Caleb Vandergreen combined for 25.6 points per contest. They shoot between the two of them 37.5% per three. Martin Keel has been able to shoot 37% per three with 10.5 points per contest. James Singieta has been able to give you 10 points on 43% 3-point shooting, and I think that with Northern Arizona being as fragile as they are down low, this is going to be a rather slow and controlled game because you have an Idaho State team that, in terms of total possessions per game, they are one of the slowest teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball, currently checking in 303rd. But that said, I do think that they're going to be able to execute really well on offense. So 143 or less in on the overhand with Idaho State. I'm willing to lay up to 9 with them. 831, 832. Eastern Washington is going to be on the road facing off against Montana. And Montana finds themselves as between a 6 to a 6.5 point favorite. And total on this game, it is 151.5. And I made my total a 155, so I like the over. You got an Eastern Washington team that is not like super fast, but they're certainly playing with a relatively good pace. 142nd in terms of total possessions per game. Montana, they check in more in that neighborhood, about 104th in the country. And for Montana, the biggest issue that you've had with this team is ball security. They're outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but when this team gets good looks, they do a nice job in terms of knocking them down. They've been a top 45 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, 33rd in the country in terms of 3-point shooting percentage. And this is a Montana team that they themselves have been able to do a relatively solid job in terms of being able to guard the 3-point line as well. They allow opponents to shoot 32.5% from 3, top 100 mark in the country. And for Eastern Washington, 325th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and away from home that goes to 39.2%. That is a bottom 25 mark in all of college basketball. And Eastern Washington overall is outside the top 335 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in a road or neutral court venue. Now you've got Isaiah Moses giving you 18 points, 3.5 assists, shoots 39% for 3, 94% at the free throw line. But for Eastern Washington, they themselves are outside the top 270 in terms of their own ball security. They've been able to do a relatively solid job shooting 35% from 3, but I'm just getting completely blasted with regards to their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage defenses. That's an issue. They're outside the top 175 in terms of rebound percentages. You only have 2 guys on the roster that give you over 5 rebounds per game. Alton Hamilton, 12 points, 6 boards, and then Stratton Rogers, 5.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. And Emmanuel Marquette, dealing with a little bit of an injury, has been hurting this team a little bit as well. And then flip side for Montana, you've got Money Williams, who's been able to give you 19 points, 4 boards, 5.5 assists. Doesn't shoot it well from 3, but Tajon Sawyer, Tyler Thompson, these 2 guys combined for about 21.5 points per game. They both shoot 40+% from 3-point range. Courtney Anderson has been dealing with a little bit of an injury. He was their top 3-point shooter, but Brook Lennox has stepped up into that role, 8.5 points, 4 boards. He shoots 35.5% from 3. Montana's not going to give you any sort of second and third chances. They're a bottom 10 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but they do a great job in terms of executing their stuff when they don't turn it over. And in a pressure spot, they shoot 78% at the free throw line. That is a top 25 mark in all of college basketball, and I do think that Montana going to be able to take it to an Eastern Washington team that's just been so awful on defense away from home. I did set my total at a 155, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number as I did set my number of 9, and I'm going to be in on that total over as well. 833, 834. UT Arlington is on the road against Utah Tech. Utah Tech is between a pick'em to a 1.5 point favorite. So on this game, it is 140.5, and I did set my total at 140.5. We did see a little bit earlier 138.5, 139.5, and anything below a 140, I am willing to take a shot on the over, as you've got a pair of teams that are really not looking to push a ton of tempo. Arlington is about 230th with regards to total possessions per game. It's a Utah Tech team that's about 162nd, but I do think that this is going to be close enough for late game fouling, and both of these teams are really good with their 3-point shooting defense. Utah Tech 22nd in the country, serves opponents 3-point shooting percentage. UT Arlington is number 1 in the country, but for UT Arlington, what helps them out is that this is a team that's going to be looking to pile drive the ball down low. They've been a top 185 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage in a road/neutral court venue, and they're going up against a Utah Tech team that is in the top 35 in terms of forcing opponents to take their shots from 2-point range, and UT Arlington 46th in the country with regards to overall percentage of their shots that come from inside the 3-point line, and this is just a much better UT Arlington defense as well. So I am going to be willing to take a shot here on UT Arlington on the money line, as I did set them as a 2.5 point favorite. For Arlington, you've got Rayshon Semester, who I think is going to be able to own things down low. He's giving you about 13.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. And I will say Ethan Potter on the flip side has been able to give this Utah Tech team 14 plus points, 7 plus rebounds per game, so he's done a nice job there. But Marcel McCreary shoots 36% from 3. He supplies about 14 points per game. Marcus Rigsby has been able to give you only about 5.5 points per game, but shoots 34% from 3 points. Does a good job in terms of the ball security battle. And for UT Arlington, their main kryptonite has been turnovers. This team is well outside the top 345 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Utah Tech is outside the top 255 as well, and this has been an Arlington team that's been a top 100 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They're a top 100 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. And then on the flip side for Utah Tech, you've got Noah Balonga, who comes over from St. Bonaventure, 12.5 points, shoots in the mid-30s from 3, and just Sean Holt has shot 45% from 3 with about 10.5 points per game. But for your Utah Tech, they have fallen outside the top 200 with regards to their own 3-point shooting percentage, and they just don't grab a lot of second and third chances for score themselves outside the top 250 with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. While they do such a great job with their 3-point shooting defense, they're a country average team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, not generating as many turnovers as they have in the past. And I do think that a Utah Tech team that has been outside the top 250 in terms of getting to the free throw line is going to have a little bit of a difficulty here, as both teams do shoot about 72.5% at the free throw line. But I do think that the overall defense that you've got for UT Arlington wins out here. So I did set my line at a 2.5. I like UT Arlington on the money line, 140 or less in on the over, 141 or higher the under, 835, 836 Long Beach State. They're going to be on the road against UC San Diego, and UC San Diego finds themselves as a pretty good size favorite here, as you're laying between 8.5 to 9.5 points with them. 144 to 146 is the total, and I did set this Long Beach State team as an underdog of 11 points. I'm going to be willing to take UC San Diego. Now for UC San Diego, it's been really interesting to take a look at their 3-point shooting percentage, because away from home, they have been one of the better 3-point shooting teams in mid-major college basketball, and at home, they have not been able to shoot it very well from 3-point range. For UC San Diego, they shoot 30.6% from 3-point range at home, 35.9% away from home. I think that irons out, and for Long Beach State right now, they're shooting 26.8% from 3-point range in a road/church court setting compared to 38% at home. I think that those home and road splits iron out a little bit, but for this UC San Diego team, they're a top 100 team in terms of taking care of the ball, and that's really been the forte of this Long Beach State defense. For Long Beach State, in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis away from them, they do find themselves in the top 80 in terms of generating turnovers, but they leave themselves very vulnerable if they aren't able to generate a turnover in terms of both 2-point and 3-point shooting percentages. For Long Beach State, they do find themselves currently outside the top 275 in both, and for Long Beach State, you've had Gavin Sykes be able to give you 18 points. He shoots 37% for 3. Petar Mistrovich comes over from Syracuse, 15.5 points, 6.5 boards, 2.5 per contest. Outside of those two guys, you don't have a single guy that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game or 10 plus points per contest. Rob Diaz has been able to give you a little bit in terms of facilitation, 3 assists, steal per contest at about 7 points per game. But for this San Diego team, I do think that they're going to be able to take over the game, because I really like what you've been able to get out of your main guy in Leo Beth, 14.5 points, 5 boards. From 3-point, she shoots about 36% for 3, and then Ellis Shulkin shoots 43% from the outside. It's a San Diego team that has been good with their interior defense, top 100 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They themselves a top 125 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. Boldengo has been able to give you 10.5 points per contest along Tom Beatty, so they do a nice job mixing and shaking. And for this Long Beach State team, while they do a nice job in terms of generating turnovers, they themselves a little bit of difficulty taking care of the ball outside the top 225 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Now they do a great job in terms of defensive glass, top 50 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. San Diego really doesn't grab a lot of second and third chances to start with. It's a Long Beach State team that really dares you to pile drive the ball inside. They tried to prevent 3-point shots, but I do think that San Diego starts to see those home and road splits iron out. I do think that they take it to a Long Beach State team that I don't think is going to generate a lot of turnovers in this ordeal. So my total 147, I like the overhand with UC San Diego. 108 made them an 11-point favorite. 837, 838. You've got Cal State Bakersfield. Meet for the Roadrunners on the road against UC Irvine. Irvine, Zot is a 16 to a 17-point favorite. Total on this game between 145 to a 146, and I set my total 141.5. I like the under. This Bakersfield team, for some reason, has really sped themselves up. They're 59th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Irvine is playing fast as well. 88th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You've had a few overtime games that have really warped that number, and for Irvine, this is a team that year in and year out, they're just one of the better defensive teams they're going to find in all of college basketball. Solid in terms of generating turnovers, top 130 team there, and for Bakersfield, they're outside the top 325 in terms of ball security, and Bakersfield, just in every facet of offense, has been awful this year. 323rd in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're a top 40 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range. They're outside the top 285 with that 2-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 275 with their 3-point shooting percentage as well. I don't know what these guys are doing right now. And then you've got an Irvine team that is currently 13th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and with a Bakersfield team that is very intentionally trying to take a lot of 2-point shots. Guess what the forte of this team is? Oh yeah, they don't allow you to be able to get any good looks on the inside whatsoever. In terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, Irvine is numero uno in all of college basketball, so I do think that they're going to go out there, run this game. Now, I did set my line at a 15.5, mainly because the Irvine offense is outside the top 270 themselves in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. You have had Juron Dixon along Kyle Evans do a nice job headlining things. Evans is your main big man, 12 points, 3.5 blocks, 8.5 rebounds per game, and then Dixon, 15.5 points on 40% 3-point shooting. Darren Sarin has been able to throw in their 11.5 points per game as well, but shoots 24% for 3. Irvine, they've been outside the top 230 with regards to their ball security, 12.5 turnovers per game, but They should be able to really control things down low. And they're a country average team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. In Irvine, they do not take too many shots from three-point themselves. They're a top 30 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the three-point line. And for Bakersfield, one thing that they have been able to do a relatively okay job of on defense has been being able to guard inside. They've been a top 275 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. But, man, for this Bakersfield team, it's been rough, to say the least, for them on offense. And we'll say top 100 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per-possession basis. Ron Jessamy, pair blocks, 11.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. Dallin Smith has been able to give you about 16 points per contest, but he only shoots 26% from three. CJ Hardy, 13.5 points. He's been a 35% three-point shooter, but CJ Hardy's right now dealing with an injury, probably going to be out of the fold once again in this game. So that means that out of your active scorers in this game, each of your top 4 guys may all shoot less than 27.5% from three-point range. So I do think that you get a little bit of a slog of a game. I do think that Irvine, their inability to be able to just really capitalize here, and Bakersfield is going to put you on the free throw line. In Irvine, right now they shoot 68% free throw line outside the top trainer. I think that that's just enough for Bakersfield to cover a 16 plus. So at 16 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Bakersfield, meet the Roadrunners, and I'm in on the under. Semi-total at 141.5, 839, 840 on the card. CSUN, Cal State Northridge is going to be on the road against Cal Poly, and Cal Poly does find themselves as a home underdog as you're catching with them 2 points. Total on this game is between 176.5 to a 177, and maybe my total 169.5. I like the under. Now, both of these teams are absolutely gunning it. Northridge is 5th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Cal Poly is number 3, but for Cal Poly, one of the strangest home and road splits in the country with their three-point shooting. They shoot 27.6% from three-point range at home, 36.7% away from home, and then you got a Northridge team that they only shoot 31% from three-point range away from home as well. So I don't think that you're going to have a lot of made threes in this game. You got a pair of teams that don't do a great job in terms of taking care of the ball. Northridge, 257th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Cal Poly is 355th, so lots of sloppiness here. And for Cal Poly, one thing I will say for this team is that they've been pretty solid in terms of not allowing a lot of second and third chances. Top 200 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Now, CSUN, they're not going to give you any second and third chances either. 16th in the country as opponents are grabbing just 23.7% of their misses as an offensive rebound. It's hard to trust Northridge in a tight game, though, because this is not a team that really cans their free throws. For this Northridge team, right now they shoot 66.2% of the free throw line. That is a bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball. Now, Larry Hughes, 18 points per contest, shoots 41% from three. He is the only out of your top 5 scorers that shoots above 32.5% from three-point shooters. Now, Josh O'Garo, 9 boards, 14 points, 3 assists per contest. Josiah Davis, 7 assists per game. And it's a CSUN team that has been a top 200 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but they're also outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Of Cal Poly, a top 30 team with regards to a percentage of their shots that do come from three-point range. Do think that home run road split irons out a little bit, and Hamad Musa might be the best player in this game. 20 points, 6 boards, shoots 37% from three. Peter Benjai shoots about 38% from three-point. She's been supplying about 13.5 points per contest. They've dealt with a few injuries, but you've had Jake Davis be a nice constant, 6 points, pair of assists per contest, and all of a sudden Jackson Mosley, who was dealing with injury towards the beginning part of the season, he's been able to come back. He's been able to give you about 7.5 points per game, and I do think that in a tight spot with Cal Poly being more of a 76.5% free throw shooting team, and this being a CSUN team that will put you on the free throw line, I think the Cal Poly gets the job done at home. Make Cal Poly the 3.5 point favorite. I like them on the money line and on the under. Sub I total at 169.5, 841, 842. Tarleton St is going to be on the road against Cal Baptist, and the Lancers of Cal Baptist do find themselves as a very sizable favorite here. You're going to be catching between 9.5 to 10.5 points with Tarleton St. Draw this game between 141 to a 142, and semi total 144.5. So I do like the over. You've got a Tarleton St group that is number 1 in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they are very much looking to pile drive the ball inside. Top 3 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range, and they've been a little bit suspect in terms of being able to hit those shots, but they have been able to give themselves a few second and third chances. Top 175 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. You've got a Cal Baptist team that absolutely owns things down low. They grab 36.8% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is a top 10 mark in all of college basketball, and with Tarleton State being outside the top 300 with regards to defensive rebound percentage, I think that very much helps you out to the over. But for the Tarleton State group, you've got Dior Johnson coming in off the bench, give you a 23.5 points per game and shooting 56% from three-point. Just been absolutely legendary what we've seen there. Now, he is dealing with a little bit of an injury, and he's probably going to be out of the fold once again. So, who are the guys that are going to need to step up? You're probably going to be looking at a lot of Kristen Beckpo, who's been able to give you about 7 points, 4 boards, especially with Cal Baptist having a lot of big men that are able to take over games for the team, as you've got Thomas Endong along with Brady Henjai, who've been able to combine for only about 11 points per game, but between the two of them, you get over 12 rebounds per game. And then you've had Freddie Hicks be in and out of the lineup as well. When he's been out there, he's been able to give you double figures. He's another guy that's probably going to be out of the fold, so they've been looking to a lot of Cameron McDowell with those two absences, as he's been a good double-figure scorer, has been able to shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range, 14 points per contest. You've also got Leroy Kelly, who's been able to give you 6 points, and he gives you 2.3 steals per game as well. The injuries have not caused them to really have a drop-off with regards to generating turnovers. It's more or less been the fact that they have been really just giving it up a little bit more from the outside, and for Cal Baptist, you do have the most dominant scorer out there on the floor. That'd be Dominic Daniels. Daniels has been giving you 22 points, 4 boards, 3.5 assists, only shoots 28.5% from 3, and this is a Cal Baptist team that they're about 300th in the country, shooting 31.5% from the outside, but they've been a top 75 team in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Now, they get sloppy with the ball. Cal Baptist, outside the top 240, serves their own ball security, and they are a top 25 team with regards to rebound percentage, so they're going to be looking to dominate there. Jonathan Grimman being able to give you about 6 points, 5.5 rebounds per game has been solid, but they also shoot 72% of the free throw line. Tarleton St is one of the most frequent fouling teams in the country, so I think they get a rough and tumble game, but Tarleton St is looking to gun it, top 40 team in terms of total possessions per game. I do think they get enough possessions here for the over, and I think that is close enough for late game fouling. So I might total 144.5 like the over, and the points with Tarleton. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games, 843, 844. UC Riverside is going to be on the road against Cal State Fullerton. Fullerton is finding themselves as a mid-tier favorite here of between 6.5 to 7.5 points. So on this game, 155 to 156.5. So Fullerton is a 9-point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number. You've got a Riverside team that's just getting absolutely dump trucked in terms of the turnover battle. I recognize that it's a Fullerton team that is not necessarily sinking a lot of like 2-point shots or anything like that, but that's it for Riverside. They're 270th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Fullerton has been a really good team in terms of generating turnovers, especially at home. In their home games specifically, Fullerton is a top 20 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and in my opinion, that spells doomsday for a UC Riverside team that just is not taking care of the ball all season long. 348th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Now, for Riverside, you do have a few guards that have been able to do a nice job of mixing and shaking. Andrew Henderson, Raquel Worthy, these guys have been able to give you combined about 32 points per game, and Henderson shoots 36% from 3. You've got Udara Patiti, who's been able to shoot 55% from 3, 7 points per contest, but you don't have a ton down low either with this team. For Riverside, they are outside the top 200 with regards to rebound percentage. They're outside the top 230 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They're darn near 300th in opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, and they've been outside the top 275 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for this Fullerton team, they've been pretty solid in terms of not allowing second and third chances. Top 200 team with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, with having Josh Ward, Jefferson, De La Cruz, Menegado lead the way, combined about 9 boards, 5.5 assists, and nearly 3 steals, and between the two of them, 27.5 points per game. They're not a great 3-point shooting team at about 33.5% from the outside, but that's still a top 250 mark in the country. They've been a top 175 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage. They give it up on the inside. They're outside the top 300 with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, but again, it's a Riverside team that has not thrived down low whatsoever. It's a Fullerton team that has been able to make life miserable with those turnovers, and then Landon Seaman has been able to shoot about 35% from 3, supply 12 points per contest. Christian Williams being able to give you a pair of steals, 9 points, 4 boards, being that do-it-all guy, I think is enough for Fullerton to be able to get the job done. And Fullerton, top 10 team in terms of total possessions per game. I think that they're going to do a nice job of gunning it and help you get that over. So by total 157, I like the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 8.5 with Fullerton, and now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-561, 306-562. Albany is going to be on the road against Bryant. This is a pick'em game, and your total's between 133 to a 135, and I made Albany the 4-point favorite. So as a slim favorite, underdog / pick'em, I'm going to be willing to take a shot on Albany. I just can't trust in this Bryant offense. I wish I could put it any other way. They are outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, outside the top 335 in terms of taking care of the ball. They're 307th in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. If you look at just raw points scored on a per possession basis, 358th in the country. Good news is they score about 25.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home, but I don't think that that's really going to help them out too much here. As for Bryant right now, you've got one guy in the roster that gives you double figures, Timothy Radulski, who's honestly one of the best players in the conference. He's able to give you about 13 points, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point. And Aaron Davis has shot 40% from 3, gives you about 10 points, 3.5 rebounds per game, but Ashley Sims is a lone guy on the roster that gives you over 4.6 rebounds per game. This has also been a unit that has been very suspect with their outside shooting defense, outside the top 225 in terms of bonus 3-point shooting percentage. Not too bad with regards to their interior defense, but with this Albany team having a guy in Amir Lindsay who's been able to shoot about 34% from 3, give you 17 points per contest. Akuchi Okeke being able to give you a block and a half, 6.5 rebounds, 10 points per game. I think that Albany is going to be able to own things on the inside. Now, Albany's not putting you under duress. They're outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they do not get to the free throw line, nor do they want to. Albany, bottom 15 team with their free throw shooting percentage percentage at 65%, bottom 10 team at getting to the free throw line. But that said, they've been a top 250 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. You've been able to have Jaden Kempson come in there, give you about 9 points, 3 assists per contest, and flat out, I just don't think that Bryant is able to really thrive on offense, and I think that allows Albany to go on the road, get the job done. I set Albany as a 4-point favorite, so I'm willing to take them on this pick'em line, made my total 132, as Bryant also a very slow and control team in terms of total possessions, spraying 334, so in on the under 306.563, 306.564. You've got Maine, and they hope to not get Maine as they play also Vermont. Vermont, a road favorite here of 7 to 8 points, totals between 128.5 to a 129, so my total 125.5. I'm in on the under. These are two of the slowest teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball. Maine is 349th in terms of total possessions per game. Vermont is 342nd, and I recognize that this Maine team has been pretty solid in terms of their defense, top 100 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but Vermont does a good job taking care of the ball. Top 100 team there, and for Maine, they are currently out of 365 Division I teams, 365th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. That is not great to say the least, and for this Vermont team, you've got TJ Squared, TJ Hurley, along TJ Long. Now, they've been dealing with a little bit of injury to one of the TJs, and Mr. TJ Long, but it seems like he should be good to go in this game. 13.5 points, shoots about 34% from 3. TJ Hurley shoots 38% from 3. Kryptonite for this Vermont team is that they've been allowing a lot of good looks from 3-point. They're outside the top 275 in terms of bonus 3-point shooting percentage away from home, but top 85 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, top 150 team in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. They're a top 20 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage as well, and with the way that they take care of the ball, this is a top 40 team with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, just 9.4 turnovers per game. That takes away really the lone thing that Maine does well, and then you've got Gussie Holden at 6'7", being able to shoot in the high 30s from 3, 15 plus points, 6 plus rebounds per game, and Maine does not have a single guy on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. Only one double-figure scorer, TJ Beal, 12 points per game, shoots 35% from 3. Maine does shoot about 31% from the outside, but they also are outside the top 290 in terms of ball security. Now, I will say Vermont is outside the top 3 in terms of generating turnovers on a per possession basis, but Maine doesn't give themselves any sort of rebounds whatsoever. They have been really wretched with their interior defense as well. They're outside the top 250 with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, and in just a slow grinder slog of a game, I think that this is going to go very horribly for this Maine team. Last time these two teams played, it was a 67-62 game. I think that Vermont runs and hides with this one. I'm going to take a shot on the under, so by total 125.5, and with Vermont, I'm going to lay up to 8 with them, 306.565, 306.566. You've got UMBC, and they're playing us Binghamton. Binghamton does find themselves as a underdog of 11 points, 137.5 is the total. I set UMBC as a 16.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Binghamton has pretty much 2/3 of their roster injured. I wish I could put it any other way, and this Binghamton team, it's a sea of red with their metrics. They're outside the top 300 with regards to rebound percentage. They are 338th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They are 323rd in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They are outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. It's just not great to say the least. As you do have Jeremiah Quigley, who comes over from Iona, and he's been able to do a nice job in terms of not getting hurt, which is a good thing. He and Zaire Beverly combined for about 25.5 points per game, and Quigley 4.5 assists, so about 3.5 turnovers per game, but shoots 16% from 3, and then Beverly actually shoots 50% from 3, but the problem is he's taken less than 10 threes as far this season. Jackson Mangini has been able to supply a little bit of scoring with about 9 points per contest, but man, this team is just not grabbing any sort of rebounds whatsoever right now. And then on the flip side of things, you've got yourself a UMBC team that has really slowed themselves down. They're now outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. Binghamton, they're a very slow and controlled team as well, especially with the injuries. They're about 277th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but UMBC does a nice job taking care of the ball. They're a top 100 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They shoot about 35.5% from 3, top 125 mark there with DJ Turner up Armstrong, 13 points, 42% 3-point shooter. Now it's a UMBC team that they themselves are outside the top 335 in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. Josh Odowandu is the lone guy that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game, 4.7 boards, 7.5 points per game, but Ace Valentine, he has been an ace for this team. 4 boards, 4 assists, 11 points, shoots 39% from 3-point, and with Binghamton really giving it up from 3, and UMBC does not give you cheap opportunities. They're a top 25 team in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. They've been a top 175 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. I think that UMBC goes out there, gets it done convincingly. I set them as a 16.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and did so I told 138.5. I think that UMBC efficient enough on offense to get you the over, so in on the over, and I'm willing to lay with UMBC. 306.567, 306.568. Florida Gulf Coast on the road against Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is a favorite of a point. Total on this game, it is 153 to 153.5. So my total 154. So 153.5 or less. I do like this total over, as Eastern Kentucky, they've always been a team that loves to go bombs away from 3, and they are shooting at home 36% from the outside. That's a pretty solid market. Florida Gulf Coast, Coast, they themselves have been a solid three-point shooting team, 55th in the country. Away from home, they shoot 36.7% from the outside, and with Eastern Kentucky now outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, I'd like Florida Gulf Coast here on the money line. For Florida Gulf Coast, they're a country average team in terms of generating turnovers. I don't know what's happened with this Eastern Kentucky team, but they used to generate a lot of turnovers. They have not been able to do that thus far this season. It is a Florida Gulf Coast team that has been leaving quite a bit of something to be desired on defense, but so is this Eastern Kentucky team. Eastern Kentucky has been a little bit more up-tempo, but not necessarily a ton. Florida Gulf Coast, they become top 100 team in terms of total possessions per game, but Eastern Kentucky, 341st in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, so they give up more points per possession at home rather than away from home. Again, Florida Gulf Coast not great, 271st, but for Florida Gulf Coast, even though they've been dealing with a few injuries, I do think that they're going to be able to get the job done here, as Ramir Bono has been able to do a nice job in the backcourt. He's been supplying you with about 12 points, shoots about 32.5% from 3 points, 5 assists per game. J.R. Konsinski has been dealing with an injury, 15.5 points, 6.5 boards, shoots about 34% from 3-point, but has been able to return for the team. Last game out against Jacksonville, he was able to play 25 minutes, so should be all good to go here. And then you've got Michael Dwaks be able to give you about 7 points, 5 boards, so you've got some nice versatility there. And then for Eastern Kentucky, you've had Matavius Myrick give you about a steal, 11.5 points, 7 boards, does not pop it from 3-point range. And then Juan Cranford has really been the main outside shooter, shooting about 37.5% from 3. And Eastern Kentucky has shot it well from 3-point range here in conference at about 39%. They are a top 40 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3-point range nationally, but just getting tattooed down low. They're outside the top 3 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They themselves are outside the top 225 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. Now, Eastern Kentucky, top 125 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, outside the top 200 with regards to defensive rebound percentage, and with them just not generating turnovers the way that they have in the past, I think that Florida Gulf Coast is able to get the job done, and if Eastern Kentucky is in a nip and tuck spot, they're going to shoot 72% free throw line, outside the top 170 there. Florida Gulf Coast, more around 73%, that's the top 160 mark, so I do think the Florida Gulf Coast does just enough to be able to get the job done. I like Florida Gulf Coast on the money line at 153.5 or less. I'm in on the over. 306, 569, 306, 570. Lemoyne is going to be on the road against Wagner, and Wagner finds themselves in a rather tight spread game here, as they are between a 2 to a 2.5 point home underdog. So on this game, it is 141, and I did set my total 139.5. I'm in on the under. Wagner was playing quite up tempo to begin the season. They have really throttled it back. They're down to about 311th in terms of total possessions per game. It's a Lemoyne team that's 212th in terms of total possessions per game, and Lemoyne is outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And I will say this for Wagner, they are a top 25 team with their 3-point shooting percentage, but Wagner has been about 293rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and the big key for Wagner is that they don't necessarily take a ton of threes, mainly because they're just turning the ball over too much. Wagner, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, 250th in all of college basketball. Lemoyne, 307. So you've got a Wagner team that's playing slowly to start with, and you've got a lot of turnovers in their games. And for Lemoyne, I could only set them as 1.5 point favorite because that 3-point shooting defense is so ghastly. They've been a top 50 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and Lemoyne, they themselves shoot about 34.5% for 3. Top 175 mark. Silo Jackson is going to be the best low post presence in this game. Block and a half, 15 points, 8.5 boards, and you've got Trent Mascara off the ball giving you about 5.5 boards, 14 points. He shoots 38% from 3-point range. Tennessee Rainwater, great name, shoots 52% from 3-point range. But for Wagner, they've been under the tutelage of a interim coaching regime after their coach in Donald Copeland was really just has to step away from the team. But that said, you've had Nick Jones be able to find his footing, 15 points. He only shoots about 28.5% from 3-point range. But then you got Eduardo Placer, Jaden Baker, who both been able to shoot about 35% from 3 with about 9.5 points per contest. Wagner's starting to go downward with regards to their 3-point shooting here in conference. They've been shooting, though, about 37% from 3 points, still relatively solid. And for Wagner, again, the turnovers, they turn the ball over 13 times per contest outside the top 100 in terms of ball security. That's going to be a little bit of an issue, but they're really good with regards to their interior defense as well. Top 100 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. With Wagner in a pressure spot, they shoot about 71% at the free throw line. That's just outside the top 200 in all of college basketball. It's a Lemoyne team that they shoot 71.9%, so both of these teams are relative equals, and for Lemoyne, they just don't give themselves second and third chances outside the top 200 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. And with Wagner doing a relatively solid job on the glass, they've been a top 150 team with regards to rebound percentage. That keeps them lively. Semi-total 139.5, 140 plus. I'm in on the under, and anything of 2+ points, I'm going to be willing to take those points. With Wagner, 306, 571, 306, 572, and JIT is going to be playing us to UMass Lowell, and Lowell does find themselves as a slim underdog here of a point to a point and a half. Total is between 147.5 to 148.5. Set NJIT is a 4.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for NJIT. It has been a team that's been well outside the top 290 with regards to rebound percentage, but all of a sudden they've been able to do a better job on the glass. The UMKC, aka Kansas City transfer, has really been able to help out with that. And Melvin Ikwamboli, he's been able to supply about 7.5 points, 6 rebounds per game, was missing for the first 10+ games of the season. And then we've had Sebastian Robinson deal with injury, but he has hit mock turbo here in conference play. In the 8 conference games, 19.5 points, 2.5 assists, still only shoots about 27% from 3, but NJIT as a whole in conference play is shooting about 35.5% from 3, with David Bolden shooting in the mid-30s from 3, 12.5 points. He's been able to step up in a big way, and for NJIT, they are outside still the top 340 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, but you've got a Massachusetts Lowell team that has just left a lot to be desired defensively. They're outside the top 250 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, outside the top 270 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They have been a top 225 team with regards to rebound percentage, but they have a tough time taking care of the ball. They're outside the top 300 with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis on defense, outside the top 310 in terms of taking care of the ball on offense. Austin Green, 14.7 boards. He's been solid down low, and then you've got Xavier Spencer and Dario Yepto, who combine to shoot about 35.5% for 3, 11.5 points per game between the two of them, but I think that the overall sloppiness, along with UMass Lowell shooting 66.9% the free throw line, that is a bottom 35 mark in all of college basketball. That allows an NJIT team that is all of a sudden healthy to be able to get the job done. I did set my line at 4.5, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and you do have a Lowell team that has been a relatively mid-tempo team this year, 155th in terms of total possessions per game, NJIT 207th, so I do think that you get perhaps a game that is close enough for a late game falling semi-total at a 142.5. I think we've gone just too far with this total. I'm going to be in on the under, and I'm willing to lay it with NJIT. 306.573, 306.574. North Florida is going to be on the road against West Georgia. West Georgia is a favorite here of 7 points. Total on this game, 169 to 171.5. Semi-total at 170.5. So at a 170 or less, I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over end. I said West Georgia is a 6.5-point favorite, so I'm actually going to be willing to take the points with North Florida. This is a North Florida team that's really just been able to pop in and lock it from 3-point range. They, away from home, do shoot 35.7% for 3, the top 75 mark in all of college basketball. West Georgia, they at home shoot only about 33.9% for 3. Now, it's a North Florida team that's absolutely ghastly with their defense. They're a bottom 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They honestly generate turnovers away from home, though. They've been a top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis in a road or neutral court environment, and this has been a West Georgia team that's had a little bit of, shall we say, issue in terms of taking care of the ball. They are outside the top 225 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis at home. Both of these teams are going to be looking to play a fast tempo. West Georgia, 94th in terms of total possessions per game. North Florida, they are 27th in North Florida, bottom 10 team in the country in terms of overall rebound percentage. Are going to get blasted there. It's Sheldon Williams-Ryden, 20 points, 9 rebounds, shoots in the mid-30s from 3 from West Georgia. He's going to be able to dominate that, but Cameron Oriole, he's going to dominate the backcourt. 21 points, 4.5 assists for North Florida, shoots 41% from 3. Dalton Gaiman shoots 39% for 3, 9.5 points. Ken Jackson is able to give you 15 points, generates a steal per contest, and in a spot where North Florida is on the free throw line, they shoot 79%. That's a top 15 mark in all of college basketball. Now, they are just getting absolutely tattooed down low. They're a bottom 10 team in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and for West Georgia, they've been dealing with a few injuries with Chaz Lulis, their number 3 scorer, deal with an ailment, but you've had Josh Smith step up in the interim with about 15.5 points per game. Javier Daniel at 6'10", he's able to give you 6.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Should be able to have some success there, but I do think that North Florida, with their good free throw shooting and this West Georgia team being outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, allows them to be lively. So my line at 170.5, 170 or less, and on the over and at 7+, we'll take those points with North Florida. 36.575, 36.576. You got Stetson, and they're going to be on the road against Bellarmine, and Bellarmine does find themselves as a favorite here of 5 points. Total is currently 150 and made a total of 156.5. So I'm going to be in on the over. Now, you don't have a Stetson team that's really looking to gun it. They're about 203rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Bellarmine is slow and controlled. 296th in terms of total possessions per game, but it's a Bellarmine team that has shot it well from 3. At home, they shoot about 37% from 3-point range, and for Stetson, if you look at their overall season numbers, right now they're 247th in the country in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage at 32.6%. That gets pile driven down to 28.2% in a road or neutral court environment, but in conference play, they've been a significantly better 3-point shooting team. In Atlantic Sun play, in their, I believe now, 10 games, they've been able to shoot about 35.5% from 3. Now, it's also a team that in conference play has been pretty much a bottom of the conference in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they're getting blown away on the glass. Now, the good news for them is that Bellarmine is a bottom 15 team in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but J.B. Phillips, Ethan Copeland, these two guys for Stetson have been able to combine for about 29 points per game, and Copeland shoots 38% for 3. Phillips, more around about 35% from the outside. Phillips does give you 5.5 rebounds per game. Colin Cool has been able to give you about 5.8 rebounds per game. Those are the lone two guys on the roster roster, though, that give you over 4 rebounds per game, and that's a big reason why I did set Bellarmine as an 8.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay as Jack Karzinski should be able to take over this game for a Bellarmine team that I recognize that they are a bottom 30 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but this has been honestly one of the more efficient offenses in the country. They're a top 25 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, 66th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and with Karzinski, he throws in their 19.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. Brian Waddell, he gives you about 15 points per game for Bellarmine. He's been able to shoot about 37% from 3, and Keon Gooding, he shoots 43% from 3, shoots 91% of the free throw line. Bellarmine doesn't get to the free throw line often, but they're a top 20 team. When they get there, they shoot 78.1% at the charity stripe, and they take care of the ball. Top 125 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Bottom 15 team in terms of bonus 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, so plenty of open looks to be had here, but I just think that Bellarmine is a better offense that gets the job done in a game where you don't get a ton of possessions, but a lot of efficiency. So I told 156.5, like the over, and for Bellarmine, we'll lay up to 8 with them. 306.577, 306.578. Stonehill is going to be on the road against Fairleigh Dickinson. Fairleigh Dickinson hopes to beat Fairleigh Price as a favorite of 2 points. 127.5 is the total, and I did make a total here of a 135.5, so I'm going to be in on the over. Now, Stonehill, they are dead last in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They themselves have been unable to take care of the ball. Really, both of these teams have had their turnover issues. Fairleigh Dickinson, they're currently 212th in the country in terms of ball security. Stonehill, they are 353rd with this regard, and Stonehill has honestly been a relatively okay team on the glass. They do give themselves some second and third chances right now. They're a top 225 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. If you look specifically at their home games, that actually ascends into the top 150. They struggle a little bit more away from home, but for the Stonehill team, I did set them as an underdog of 3.5 points, mainly because I do think that for Stonehill, their inability to generate turnovers will allow Fairleigh Dickinson to be able to get good, clean possessions, and for Fairleigh Dickinson, right now they're shooting 25.6% from 3-point range at home. Away from home, that goes at 32.5%. I have to think that this is going to be ironing out a little bit more, and Fairleigh Dickinson is not the same backcourt that we've seen in the past, but you still do have a few guys that are able to do a nice job of mixing and shaking, and Joey Neesman along with Eric Parnell. These two guys combine for about 25 points per game, but both shoot above 35% from 3. They're going to have the best rebounder in this game, and Tashad Jackson, 9.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game, though Raymond Espano Guzman on the flip side for Stonehill does give you about 7 or so rebounds per game, and you've had Stefan Tudic be able to give you about 7.5 to 8 rebounds per game as well, but the true 7-footer and Cyril Martinoff has been able to supply 7.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, and it's a Fairleigh Dickinson team that's outside the top 3 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but that said, they've been a top 275 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They have been themselves a top 200 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage, and then for Stonehill, you do have Herman Coffey in the backcourt, give you about 14 points, shoots 39% from 3. Will Batchelor being out with an injury has really hurt the team. It's Avante Ackett, Ches Sitson. They've been able to combine for about 22 points per game. They combine for about 9.5 rebounds per game, but in a pressure spot, Stonehill, they are shooting 68.5% of the free throw line. That's right around about 300th in all of college basketball. And while this Stonehill team, very good on the interior, they're a top 75 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 300 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, but they have been able to grab for themselves a few second and third chances. I do think that with Fairleigh Dickinson not generating a ton of turnovers, they're going to get more clean possessions out of both of these teams. So set a total of 135.5. I think that this comes down to late game fouls, so I'm going to be in on the over end. Fairleigh Dickinson, I trust them more at the free throw line, shooting above 70% at the charity stripe. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3 with them. 306.579, 306.580. You've got Jacksonville, and they're going to be on the road against Queens NC, and Queens NC does find themselves as a pretty good size favorite here of 9 points on this game, 146, and I like the over. Set my total 152.5. And I recognize that Jacksonville has been a pretty slow and controlled team, 333rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Queens NC, they're fast, not necessarily warp speed fast, 111th in terms of total possessions per game. And Jacksonville is just not shooting well from 3. They are 313th in the country in terms of their own 3-point shooting percentage, but Queens NC is outside the top 330 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But Queens NC also, they have been really good with their offense. Overall, 45th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but if you look specifically at home, that is numero uno in all of college basketball. This is a Jacksonville team that they themselves are 92nd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, so that's been a little bit of an issue, but the reason why I'm going to be willing to take the points with this Jacksonville team is that Queens NC also 348th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So you've got Nasir Man, who's been the man to be able to give you 13 plus points, 5 plus rebounds per game for this Queens NC team. On the flip side for Jacksonville, it's just been really mix and match. You've right now got essentially 7 different guys that give you between 7.1 and 10.1 points per per contest. You've had Hayden Wood be able to shoot 40% per three, 10 points per game. You don't have a single guy that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, but this has been a top 150 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they've been outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well. But for Queens, this can be a little bit of an hit or miss 3-point shooting team. They shoot about 35% overall, so that has been a top 150 mark in the country. They really look to drive the ball down low, though. They've been a top 15 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. You have Berman along with Devontae Parker combined for about 33.5 points per game, and Parker is now shooting 45% from 3. Berman, who shot about 40% last year, he's still below 30%. Well, you do have Carson Schwieger give you about 41% 3-point shooting, along with Jordan Watford. Both of these guys combined for about 21 points per contest. It's a Queens NC team that is not going to put you under duress. They're outside the top 275 in terms of generating turnovers, so lots of good clean possessions to be had here. And Queens NC has been outside the top 200 with regards to rebound percentage. I think that's enough for a Jacksonville team that's been really good at not allowing second and third chances to do just enough to remain lively. I set my line at 8.5, so 9+1. Take the points with Jacksonville. Like the over, I did set my total here at a 152.5. 306-581, 306-582. St. Francis of Pennsylvania is on the road against Mercer. Mercer is a favorite of 8.5 points. 135.5 is the total. Set a total of 134.5. I do like the under. You're on a St. Francis team that's been looking to speed themselves up from past seasons in terms of total possessions per game. They are 133rd in the country. Mercer is one of the slowest teams that you're going to find in the country. Right now, they are checking in 358th in terms of total possessions per game, but Mercer's a really good defense. They are overall 99th in the country in points allowed on a per possession basis, and a top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And that's big against a St. Francis team that has been outside the top 250 with regards to their ball security. And St. Francis is just awful on defense. They're outside the top 320 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They have been getting killed on the glass outside the top 250 with that regard. One thing that they do is they are a top 145 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And I like what Sky Wicks brings to the table. 17 points, 7.5 boards, shoots 36% from 3. And St. Francis has been able to shoot about 34% from 3-point if you include their non-D1 games. That's about country average, but for this Mercer team, even though they have not been able to find a lot from the outside, they should be able to do a nice job in terms of owning things down low. I recognize that they don't grab a lot of second and third chances, but they've been pretty solid in terms of not allowing second and third chances on glass themselves. And then you've got Jacob Lellerman along with Bernie Blunt, who've been able to combine for 29 points per game, and Lellerman shoots 40% from 3-point. It's a team that it ranks in the top 100 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. And for this Mercer team, they've been a top 100 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, so they're doing the little things well. And then you got Kadir Martin down low, give you about 6.5 boards, 2.5 blocks per contest. Michaelis Ivanauskas about 8.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. Zion Russell on the flip side for St. Francis is able to give you double figures, but he does not shoot it well from 3-point. Mercer's, they've been a top 175 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and I think that they go out there, get the job done in a game that's going to be very slow, controlled, and have a lot of turnovers. So somebody told 134.5, 135 plus in on the other end. I'm willing to lay up to 10 here with Mercer's. 306-583, 306-584. Chicago State is on the road against Central Connecticut. Central Connecticut is a pretty sizable favorite here. You're laying 10 points with them. 137 to 139.5 is the total. Made my total 138.5, so 138 or less in on the over. Central Connecticut has been playing at quite a slow tempo thus far this season in terms of total possessions per game. They check in right around about 330th, but for Central Connecticut, just not the same defense that we've seen in the past. 250th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Specifically at home, they've actually been a bottom 10 team in the country, but Chicago State, they're also a bad defense. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, a good hearty 335th. Chicago State has been a top 150 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but you've got a Central Connecticut team that's in the top 100 with regards to their ball security. Central Connecticut, a top 225 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, because this team has absolutely went into inferno mode from 3 points. For Central Connecticut, right now from 3-point range, they shoot in that neighborhood of about 35.8% from 3. That goes up to 37.4% at home. And you've got a Chicago State team that's not really going to be able to really limit them down low either, as Chicago State does not have a single guy on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, though they do have a trio of guys, Jorel Cockrell, CJ Ray, and Marcus Ankersley, all between 13 and 13.5 points per game, with Cockrell shooting 40.5% from 3. Chicago State has become a top 300 team with their 3-point shooting percentage now at about 32%, but they are, if you include non-Division I games, 365th in the country in both 2-point shooting defense and 2-point shooting offense. They are going to get absolutely destroyed down low. This is a Chicago State team that has been country average in terms of taking care of the ball, so I do think that they're going to be able to find a few looks from 3. Stephen Byard has been able to give you 8 points, right around about 4 rebounds per game, but for Central Connecticut, I do think that they're still going to find good looks from 3-point range, with having Darren Smith Jr. giving 19 points, 87% free throw shooter, 37% for 3. Jay Rogers, 36.5% 3-point shooter, 11.5 points, 7 assists per contest. Melo Sanchez shooting over 40% from 3. He's been able to supply about 9.5 points per game. It's a little bit of a top-heavy team, but this team has has been able to thrive in terms of taking care of the ball. They have really been lackadaisical on defense, but you know what? With the Chicago State team being as rough as they are down low, I do think that Central Connecticut has more on the inside to be able to get the job done here. Set my line at 12.5, so want to lay the number, and at a 138 or less in on the over. And this final game does not have numbers because it was added to the board, but I've got my handicap 3 of 6.585, 3 of 6.586. New Haven is on the road against Long Island. Long Island, I set as a 16.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay up to 16 with them. 17 or more, take the points with New Haven. Set a total of 138.5. So 138 or less in on the over, 139 or higher the under. You had an LIU team that's been playing at a pretty good pace, 151st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. New Haven dead last in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And New Haven, not the world's worst defense, to our 9th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This Long Island team, they've been around about 130th, and for Long Island, the big issue for this team has been turnovers. They're outside the top 330 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. And New Haven, country average team, 168th in terms of generating turnovers. LIU, though, has been a top 75 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. They give themselves second and third chances outside the top 300 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but I have no faith whatsoever in this New Haven team being able to grab second and third chances. It's a Long Island team that I think is going to be able to generate turnovers on a New Haven team that has been outside the top 250 in terms of ball security as well. New Haven, they shoot 31.5% from 3-point outside the top 300 naturally there, and you've got Jabari Fitzpatrick along with Najami George, who've been able to combine for 23 points per game, but neither guy shoots above 31% from 3. You've got Stefano Fallapalla, who's been able to give you 9 points, 5 boards, and Andre Pasha has been able to give you 5 rebounds per game, but Long Island should be able to absolutely own things down low with this Long Island team. Trio of guys that give you 14 plus points per contest. Craig Echo Gordon, 14 points, 6 boards, 2.5 assists, steal and a half per contest. Malachi Davis, a steal and a half, 4 assists, 15 points per game, and then Jamal Fuller, he fills it up with his 3-point shooting at 45.8% from 3-point. And this is an LIU team that low-key has become a really good 3-point shooting team, even though out of their top 3 scorers, only one of them has been really dominant from 3. At home, they shoot 40.3% from 3-point range. That is a top 15 mark in all of college basketball, and it's a New Haven team that they've been allowing a lot of good looks from 3-point range. They've honestly not been the world's worst team in terms of being able to control things on the inside, but this New Haven team right now is 282nd in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. I think that Long Island going to be able to tear them apart, so willing to lay up to 16 with Long Island, 17 or more. Take the points with New Haven, 138 or less in on the over, 139 or higher the under, and that'll wrap things up for the Thursday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you have 1 or 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUnit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast. Give you guys fix and analysis on every game, every day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.